of Israel and those of the nations scattered abroad. I'm Priest done with the House of Wisdom, coming to bring the main Sabbath class for today, titled Rise Israel. This class is about our history, where we've been, so we can know where we're going. Everybody mentions the phrase Kwam Yasharala, or Rise Israel. But what are we rising to? We must understand what our purpose is, what we are to do, so we can understand what we are to rise to, what we are to elevate to from our dead state. Before we do that, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that Chief Priest mentioned about this woman, this great woman that was prophesied all throughout. We're going to start in Revelation chapter 12, and if Apprentice Priest T. John, you could grab that, Revelation chapter 12, verse 1, and then Priest Azariah, if you would hold Revelation chapter 13, verse 1. We're going to touch a little bit on this woman, and then we shall know who that is, but we're going to give some context to it first, most high willing, before we go into the scriptures, dive in, and prove who this woman is. Let's first get some understanding that was given to John the Revelator about this great woman. Revelation chapter 12, verse 1.
And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars.
So we see this great woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars, looking beautiful, looking gorgeous. There's more to it than that, but we're just going to read through it. To get that full understanding, definitely look at some of those classes where we broke down Revelation 12. But we see her adorned with some regal apparel, so to speak. Let's continue on.
Verse 2, and she being with child cried, travailing in birth and pain to be delivered.
All right, and she, this royal woman, was impregnated, and she had a child. And it was a painful thing to deliver this child. She was in travail and turmoil bringing forth this child. Read on.
Verse 3, and there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads.
All right, there was another wonder that John saw, which was this great red dragon, being Satan himself. And he went to persecute and accuse this woman that we're reading about in Revelations. He took a third part of the stars and cast them down from her crown. Let's read on.
Verse 4, and his tail drew a third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born.
So Satan was waiting at the womb, waiting for that baby to be birthed out so he could go and devour it, destroy it. We've actually seen this in modern days. You can see a Komodo dragon, a dragon waiting at the womb of like a deer or something like that for that little young one to be born. And as soon as that thing was born, scooping it up, eating it, swallowing that thing whole. There are videos of this online. You can find this. And it is somewhat disturbing. But that is how Satan is looking with this woman. He's waiting for that baby to come right out so he can devour it. He's giving it no time to stand up, to get strong. He's waiting to devour it right away. Let's continue on.
Verse 5, and she brought forth that man-child, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up into Abba and to his throne.
So this child was supposed to rule over all the nations, the entire earth. This child was destined to rule, and this is why Satan has such a huge vendetta against it, because he wants to be the ruler, rather than this man-child that was about to be born. Let's continue on.
Verse 6, and the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had that place prepared of Abba, that they should feed her there 1,260 days.
All right, jump down to verse 14.
And to the woman were given 2 wings of great eagle, that she may fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for a time, the times and a half a time, from the face of the serpent.
So she was taken away from the face of Satan so that she could be nourished for a time, and that she could nourish this child for a time. Let's drop that. Let's go to Revelation chapter 13, verse 1, Priest Azariah. So we see Satan was waiting to come and take that young one that wasn't even born yet and to devour it, to destroy it. But the Most High gave rest to this woman, and she was nourished. The baby, the child was nourished so it could grow up strong and take over the world as it was required to do. Now Satan, being envious, saw of a way to go and destroy this woman still. Let's get that, Revelation chapter 13, verse 1. Now, we have a lot of things that we want to cover in this class, so we're not going to do an in-depth breakdown of Revelation 13 as Chief Priest did, but we're going to touch on a little bit before we continue on in the class. Revelation chapter 13, verse 1.
And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy.
All right. So we see a beast coming up with 7 heads and 10 horns. Let's drop that, go to verse 4. Pick it up in verse 4. Who gave this beast the power to reign, to rule?
And they worshiped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast.
So the dragon, Satan, the same Satan from Revelation 12 that sought to kill the woman and her child, also came and gave power to this beast. And he rose up this beast so that he could persecute this woman. Let's read on.
And they worshiped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him?
And this beast, this great nation, came up and started worshiping the dragon. Did not worship the Most High, worshiped the dragon, the Satan, their father, who gave them power. So much so that nobody could war against this beast. Everybody looked at this great nation and said, nobody can go to war with them. Nobody can topple them. Let's read on.
Verse 5. And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against Abba, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations.
So Satan, the dragon, gave this beast power, strength to go and make war against the saints, make war against the chosen lineage of the Most High. And the beast got so proud that they blasphemed the Most High who allowed all this to happen. So they went and served Satan and sought to do the will of Satan. Satan himself couldn't kill this young baby. So he rose up a nation to go and kill that young lad for him, so that he could stop that rulership that was to go all across the earth and go all across the globe. Most High willing, as we continue on, we're going to dive deeper into this understanding in 2nd Ezra as well. He received the same vision. But before we go on, we're going to bring up Sister Medina so we can go through in the announcements, and then we're going to pick it up with the rest of this class. But stay tuned so we can understand who this woman is and how it pertains to us in this latter days, and how we, as Israel, can rise. All right, Sister Medina, you have the floor.
Shalom, House of Wisdom family. I'm Sister Medina with your announcements. Welcome to the 4th day of the 6th month of Ira in the constellation or Mazzaroth of Issachar in the cursed wind. All praises to the Most High. This past so-called Wednesday at 12 midnight, the priesthood gathered here at headquarters, sounding the trumpet of the new month, Ira, the last month of the summer season. What a blessing to serve the Most High in due season at his appointed time. Let us keep in the front of our minds that Issachar influences the saints to labor in the vineyard of the Most High. As we are approaching the radiating power of the cursed moon tomorrow, so-called August 15th, until the 30th, we hope that you are intentionally delving yourself in the oblations, cleansing yourself of all unrighteousness and spiritual wickedness, so that we may all witness the Most High leverage, drought, famine, and voidness upon the workers of iniquity, while we, the saints of the Most High, may experience abundance, fertility, and abundance. Hallelujah. The details for Ira and all the months can be unlocked in the 2021-2022 Biblical Calendrical Study Guide. Each month is preceded with 3 pages of biblical insight, providing those who have an ear to hear both knowledge and understanding of what we, the saints of the Most High, can anticipate monthly. To include time markers, high holy days, such as the memorial blowing of trumpets, which we just experienced, and the memorial days, and as well as biblical history. As Priest Yaradon stated in the class titled Components of the Calendar, this document is much more than a calendar, but a study guide. All praises to the Most High. Through wisdom, we have been given another key to be closer to our Heavenly Abba. If you have not secured your copy of the 2021-2022 Biblical Calendrical Study Guide, please go into www.shekaniah.com/calendar to do such. If finances are an issue, please contact us for a free digital copy of all the High Holy Days and Memorial Days. Each week, House of Wisdom offers classes to further your studies of the Seventh Covenant. We invite you to join in and navigate scriptures through the lens of wisdom and increase your knowledge in the Word and application of the Word. Every first day, so-called Sunday, all House of Wisdom daughters are invited to attend the Daughters of Wisdom class at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. All praises to Abba for our intro team, who renders lessons on the 7 pillars of wisdom, acceptable attributes, and health and wellness. The main class, taught by both Priest Hebron and Priest Raphael, with patience, lead us, daughter, in the ways of wisdom, also known as the Ruach HaKodesh, who has written in Wisdom of Solomon 7:28, for Abba loveth none but him that dwelleth with wisdom. So House of Wisdom daughters, join in. You do not want to miss out. Every so-called Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, let us join us for Bible study with Priest Ira and Priest Gabaria, as well as various priests from all over the four corners of the earth, navigate us learners through the 7 pillars of wisdom and practical biblical principles for living. One of my favorites is the 7-pillar portion. This portion truly shows us believers how to love our neighbor as ourselves. And Hebrew brothers, this class is both interactive and engaging, and upon conclusion, audible copies may be obtained upon request. Please join in this week as Priest Bakar concludes part 3 of the lesson on faith. For non-Israelite brethren interested in learning your role in the service and worship of the Most High, House of Wisdom invites you to attend Unity, the United Nations in the Tabernacles of Yahushai, which reconnects non-Israelite believers to the Most High through Israel, according to Acts 14:27. By way of the Holy Spirit, Scripture has revealed that salvation has been made available to all through the covenant of David by Yahushai the Prince. To obtain access to any of our classes, visit us on our Facebook page or visit the House of Wisdom website at www.shekaniah.com. Lastly, they that worship the Most High must do so in spirit and in truth. Therefore, Abba has designated these spiritual oblations and sacrifices be performed by a robust, healthy, single-minded priesthood, as outlined in 1 Chronicles 24:25 and 26. By David, there is a need for righteous, set-apart men to fulfill the roles of priest porters and holy singers, and righteous, set-apart daughters as holy singers. If you are interested in joining the priesthood in one of these 3 capacities, join our candidate pool by visiting the House of Wisdom website at www.shekaniah.com/priest application and apply. As stated in the past several weeks, our media platform is expanding, and the House of Wisdom media team is currently still recruiting volunteers of all skill level in videography, photography, music, and or illustration. For those interested in spreading the gospel of peace in this capacity, please send a message to Priest AHZARAYA via the How chat or email him at priestazariah@shekaniah.com. That is spelled pr.ahzaraya@shekaniah.com. You may also apply for consideration at shekaniah.com/media team. Please note that this position is for House of Wisdom members only. All praises to the Most High for those who continually support the priesthood with your tithes and free will offerings. Let us all continue to prioritize the will of Abba with our support. As noted earlier, we are in Ira, during which the wares, burdens, and our focus should be on building the storehouses of Abba. We are preparing for the winter feast of the Most High, and your support of tithes and free will offerings is important. Please note that tithes are agricultural goods set apart for the oblations and spiritual sacrifices and consist of flour, salt, extra virgin olive oil, aged wine, and incense. Your free will offerings are monetary donations used for the furthering of the 7th covenant, the gospel of peace. Abba has given us the power to get wealth, that he may establish the covenant which he swore unto our fathers. Both are necessary, saints of the Most High, so let's prioritize the will of our Abba. For more information regarding the tithes and free will offerings, feel free to visit our website at www.shekaniah.com/tithes. And to make a contribution of a free will offering, visit us at www.shekinah.com/donate. For any questions, comments, House of Wisdom inquiries, please contact the correspondence team at houseofwisdom@shekinah.com. We look forward to hearing from you. As a final reminder, all links that have been shared within these announcements may be found in the description of this live video. This concludes the announcements for today. I will turn your attention back over to Watcher Priest Yardan for the main class. May the peace and thanksgiving offerings be multiplied unto you all. Shalom.
Shalom. Let us continue with the class, Rise Israel, so we can understand our history, so we can know where we are going. Let us begin the class. Shalom. Greetings to all the brothers and sisters. Once again, I'm Priest Yardan with the House of Wisdom. Joined today by my readers. On my right, we have Priest Azariah, and to my left, we have Apprentice Priest Tijan. Once again, we're going to pick up in where we left off, talking about this great woman that we must know about, that Satan sought to persecute. Let us follow along, because Ezra, who was leaving the Babylonian captivity, had the same vision. He received that same insight that was given to John the Revelator years later, hundreds of years later. So let's pick it up and see what he got and get some understanding from him as well, so we can start to understand who this woman is, so we can know about rising up above some of the curses that have befallen us. Let's pick that up. 2 Ezra chapter 9, verse 38, Priest Azariah.
And when I spake these things in my heart, I looked back with mine eyes, and upon this right side I saw a woman. And behold, she mourned and wept with a loud voice, and was much grieved in heart, and her clothes were rent, and she had ashes upon her head. And then let I my thoughts go that I was in, and turned me unto her, and said unto her, Wherefore weepest thou? Art thou so grieved in thy mind?
So Ezra is meditating on some of the things that have befallen them, befallen the children of Israel in their captivity, and he's lamenting for them. And while thinking this, he saw a woman that was weeping as well, that was grieving. And he went to her and said, let me comfort you. What's going on? Why are you weeping? Let's read on.
Verse 41, and she said unto me, Sir, let me alone, that I may be well myself, and add unto my sorrow. For I am sore vexed in my mind, and brought very low. And I said unto her, What aileth thee? Tell me. She said unto me, I, thy servant, have been barren and had no child, though I had an husband 30 years. In those 30 years I did nothing else day and night, and every hour, but make my prayer to the highest. After 30 years, Abba heard me, thine handmaid, looked upon my misery, considered my trouble, and gave me a son. And I was very glad of him. So was my husband also, and all my neighbors, and we gave great honor unto the Almighty. And I nourished him with great travail. So when he grew up and came to the time that he should have a wife, I made a feast.
All right, now let's move on to 2nd Ezra chapter 10. We see that this woman is lamenting, and she's giving her story to Ezra. And she says that I was barren for 30 years. Even though I had a husband, I could not conceive seed and bear forth a child. But then I prayed day and night consistently every hour, and the Most High rewarded me and gave me a son. And that son I nourished. I took him. Even through great travail, I nourished him and made sure that he would sustain the time ahead. And then later on, he got ready to marry. He got ready to wife, or to get a wife. And we began a feast, a celebration. Let's pick it up where she left off in 2nd Ezra chapter 10, verse 1. But it sounds very familiar to what we were reading in Revelations. Now, those who have been watching us should already know what this is signifying, what this is referring to. But for those who don't, we're going to keep a little mystery until we actually go and break it down, Most High willing. So let's pick it up in 2nd Ezra chapter 10, verse 1.
And it so came to pass that when my son was entered into his wedding chamber, he fell down and died.
So this is why she's lamenting. This is why she is in sorrow and fasting. When that time for this great celebration, this great feast, that wedding came, that man-child, that son, died. Let's read on.
Verse 2. Then we all overthrew the lights, and all my neighbors rose up to comfort me. So I took my rest until the 2nd day at night. And it came to pass, when they had all left off to comfort me, to the end I might be quiet, then rose I up by night and fled, and came hither into this field, as thou seest. And I do now purpose not to return into the city, but here to stay, and neither to eat nor drink, but continually mourn and to fast until I die.
So the woman said, after he died, my neighbors came and tried to comfort me, but it wasn't sufficient. And I got up and left and ran to this field. And I said, I'm never going back to that city. I'm just going to fast here and die because of how sorrowful I am. That was my only son. I had prayed 30 years to receive him. And as soon as he was getting ready to continue on this lineage, he died. And now I have no more heir. Now I'm going to fast and die in this field that I ran off to. Let's continue on. Let's see how Ezra responded to her.
Verse 5. And then left I the meditations wherein I was, and spake to her in anger, saying, Thou foolish woman, above all other, seest thou not our mourning, and what happeneth unto us? How that Zion our mother is full of all heaviness, and much humbled, mourning very sore? And now, seeing we all mourn, and are sad, for we are all in heaviness, art thou grieved for one son?
So Ezra came back and said, you foolish woman, you mourning for this one little boy? What about all the thousands that died when Israel fell, when Jerusalem fell? And we were taken captive, all of us, into this great land of Babylon. And you're mourning for that? We're mourning for our whole nation. But you're mourning for your one son? Let's continue on.
Verse 9. For ask the earth, and she shall tell thee, that it is she which ought to mourn for the fall of so many that grow upon her.
He says the earth should be mourning more so than you, because the glory of the earth, the glory of the world has fallen, and many have fallen and slain by the sword because of our iniquity, because of our wickedness. Let's continue on.
Verse 10. For out of her came all at the first, and out of her shall all others come. And behold, they walk almost all into destruction, and a multitude of them is utterly rooted out. Who then should make more mourning than she that hath lost so great a multitude? And not thou, which art sorry but for one?
Once again, he's saying the same thing. The earth should be mourning because of the destruction of Jerusalem, an entire nation, and you're mourning for this one child. Let's read on.
Verse 12. But if thou sayest unto me, my lamentation is not like the earth's, because I have lost the fruit of my womb, which I brought forth with pains and bare with sorrows. But the earth, not so. For the multitude present in it, according to the course of the earth, is gone, as it came. Then say I unto thee, like as thou hast brought forth with labor, even so the earth also hath given her fruit, namely man, ever since the morning unto him that made her. Now therefore keep thy sorrow to thyself, and bear with a good courage that which hath befallen thee. For if thou shalt acknowledge the determination of Abba to be just, thou shalt both receive thy son in time, and shalt be commended among women.
So he's saying, don't say you should be mourning more than the earth for the calamity that has befallen the chosen seed. The earth took this pain, took this time to actually bring forth these children to instill the worship of the Most High. And he's saying, be encouraged, because the Most High can give you that son back. Don't just keep mourning. Pray to the Most High again. He gave it to you once, he will give it to you again. Let's read on.
Verse 17. Go thy way into the city to thine husband. And she said unto me, that will I not do. I will not go into the city, but here will I die.
So he told her, go back to your husband and enjoy your life. Don't mourn for your one son. Let's all mourn for the children of Israel that have fallen. And she said, no, I won't do that. I need to mourn for my son that has perished. Let's continue on.
Verse 19. So I proceeded to speak further unto her and said, do not so, but be counseled by me. For how many are the adversities of Zion? Be comforted in regard of the sorrow of Jerusalem.
So don't do what you're saying. Listen to my counsel, sis. Don't mourn for your son. Mourn for the Jerusalem that has fallen. Mourn for this great holy city that the nations came and destroyed. Let's continue on.
Verse 21. For thou seest that our sanctuary is laid waste, our altar broken down, our temple destroyed. Our psaltery is laid on the ground. Our song is put to silence. Our rejoicing is at an end. The light of our candlestick is put out. The ark of the covenant is spoiled. Our holy things are defiled. And the name that is called upon is almost profaned. Our children are put to shame. Our priests are burnt. Our Levites are gone into captivity. Our virgins are defiled, and our wives ravished. Our righteous men carried away. Our little ones destroyed. Our young men are brought in bondage, and our strong men are become weak.
So he goes on to talk about some of the things that we should be lamenting for, that Ezra in his time in Babylon should be lamenting for and mourning for. He's saying, don't mourn because your son couldn't get married. Let's mourn because our sanctuary is now laid waste. The altar is broken down. The candlestick has no more light in it. The ark of the covenant is spoiled. They almost profane the name of the Most High himself. Our priests have gone to captivity. Our virgins are defiled. Righteous men are taken and carried away into captivity. Let's mourn for that. Not because your son could not get married. We need to mourn for that. And what else?
Verse 23. And which is the greatest of all, the seal of Zion hath now lost her honor, for she is delivered into the hands of them that hate us.
The seal of Zion has lost her honor. The covenant given to us in Zion has lost its honor. We talked about this in several classes, that the covenant and sealing are synonymous, are one and the same. And he's saying that covenant that was given to those in Zion is no more. It's worthless. It has lost its honor. It's like a nice golden plate that has become rusted and has gone away. It is of none effect now. That is the worst part of this. We need to be mourning for this because our covenant has been brought into the hands of those that hate us. Let's continue on.
Verse 24. And therefore shake off thy great heaviness and put away the multitude of sorrows, that the mighty may be merciful unto thee again. And the highest shall give thee rest and ease from thy labor. And it came to pass, while I was talking with her, behold, her face upon a sudden shined exceedingly, and her countenance glistered, so that I was afraid of her, and mused what it might be.
All right, so now we see this woman who Ezra was talking to and trying to console and point her into the other direction. She began to change shape. She began to become something different. And she became shining. Her face glowed exceedingly, and he was afraid. Before we pick it up and go through it, because the angel Uriel is going to come to Ezra and tell him exactly what this is, what this means, let's get an understanding of our history a little bit. If APT, John, you'll get 2 Samuel chapter 7, verse 1. We'll pick it up there. Let's look at our history, the history of Israel. So often we kind of skip around. We don't really understand the context of it. But let's pick it up from when we left Egypt. When we left Egypt, Moses and the children of Israel dwelt in Sinai for 40 years. And then Joshua took them into the promised land. He became their savior. They crossed into Jordan, and they started establishing the territory for all the tribes. And in their territories that were set up for them, they conquered all the nations and were supposed to push them all out. One place was chosen where the Most High was going to set up his tabernacle. And over the course of time, it was not set up yet. And David, the righteous king, the first righteous king essentially of Israel, came and decided he wanted to build a house. Let's pick it up from there. In 2 Samuel chapter 7, verse 1, this is after David conquered many nations and fought many battles and rewarded himself with a great palace, a great palatial estate. And he said, I'm dwelling in a nice tent or a nice house of cedars, but the Most High is just in a tent. I think I need to build a house for the Heavenly Father. Let's pick it up there and see what he said and what transpired at that event. 2 Samuel chapter 7, verse 1.
And it came to pass, when the king sat in his house, and the Most High had given him rest round about from all his enemies, that the king said unto Nathan the prophet, See now, I dwell in a house of cedar, but the ark of Abba dwelleth within curtains.
So the ark of the Most High is still in the same curtains built by Moses, which was hundreds of years ago. We need to, get with the times. We need to update this. We have our own nation. We're not traveling anymore. Let's build a place for the Most High. Continue on.
Verse 3. And Nathan said to the king, Go, do all that is in thine heart, for the Most High is with thee.
So Nathan said, Go ahead, do what you wish, because the Most High is with you. But the Most High came back to Nathan and told him something else. Let's read on.
Verse 4. And it came to pass that night that the word of the Most High came unto Nathan, saying, Go and tell my servant David, Thus said the Most High, Thou shalt build me a house for me to dwell in. Whereas I have not dwelt in any house since the time that I brought up the children of Israel out of Egypt, even to this day, but I walk in a tent and in a tabernacle.
All right, so the Most High asked a rhetorical question. He wasn't stating, he was asking, You want to build me a house, David? That's what you want to do? You want to build me a house? All right, I haven't dwelt in the house since the times that we came out of Egypt, since Moses built that tabernacle. And I don't need a house to dwell in. But since you want to do that, I'll give that to you. But I'm not going to give it straight to you, David. Let's read on.
Verse 7. And all the places wherein I have walked with the children of Israel, spake I a word with any of the tribes of Israel, whom I commanded to feed my people Israel, saying, Why build ye not me an house of cedar?
So you want to build me a house? I never came and commanded any of the children of Israel and said, Why have you not built me a house? Most I said, I didn't do that. But you want to build me a house, David? Let's read on.
Verse 8. Now therefore, so shalt thou say unto my servant David, Thus said the Most High of hosts, I took thee from the sheepcote, from following the sheep, to be ruler over my people, over Israel. And I was with thee whithersoever thou wentest, and I cut off all thy enemies out of thy sight. And I made thee a great name, like unto the name of the great men that are in the earth. Moreover, I will appoint a place for my people Israel, and will plant them, that they may dwell in the place of their own, and may move no more. Neither shall the children of wickedness afflict them any more, as before time.
So he said, David, I took you up. I raised you up from nothing to something, from a little shepherd to a great king and ruler over all my people. And you want to build me a house. You know what, David? I'll let you do that. I'll give that to you. We shall choose a place, and Israel shall no more move this as like a little tent that they can pack up and shut down and move around. We're going to build a set house in a set place. Let's do that, David. How about that? Let's continue on.
Verse 11. And that since the time that I commanded judges to be over my people Israel, and have caused thee to rest from all thine enemies, also the Most High telleth thee that he will make thee an house.
So the Most High said, I will make this house. I will choose the place and the time for this house to be built, David. Let's read on.
Verse 12. And when thy days be fulfilled, and thou shalt sleep with thy fathers, I will set up thy seed after thee, which shall proceed out of thy bowels, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build an house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever.
All right, so the Most High said, it's not going to be you, David. Even though it was on your heart, your mind to do it, I'm not giving this to you to build this house. You're going to die and pass away. But I'm going to take your son, and he's going to be the one to raise up. And I'm giving peace all around, no wars all around, and he shall be the one that shall build my holy city, or my holy house for his name, saith the Most High. Let's drop that and let's pick it up where that happened. 1 Kings chapter 5, verse 1, priest Azariah. So we see David in his day, when he had rest from his enemies, decided, I want to build a house for the Heavenly Father. The Most High said, not just yet, this moment. Not yet, David. It will happen, since it was on your mind to do. It was good, but not with you. It's going to be with your son. Let's pick that up, 1 Kings chapter 5, verse 1, and see when this was actually fulfilled. Now keep in mind, all of this, not going through this for no reason. It's all going to connect back with what we went through earlier, Most High willing, in 2 Ezra chapter 9 and 10. 1 Kings 5 and 1, priest Azariah.
And Hiram, king of Tyre, sent his servants unto Solomon, for he had heard that they had anointed him king in the room of his father. For Hiram was ever a lover of David. And Solomon sent to Hiram, saying, Thou knowest how that David my father could not build a house unto the name of the Most High his Abba, for the wars which were about him on every side, until the Most High put them under the soles of his feet. But now the Most High my Abba hath given me rest on every side, so that there is neither adversary nor evil occurrent.
All right, so Solomon is saying, my father David wanted to build the house of the Most High, talking to Hiram, this king of Tyre. And he said, now, though, it is my time. The Most High has given me rest on every side. And now is that time to fulfill that promise the Most High gave to him to build this great holy house. Let's continue on.
And behold, I purpose to build an house unto the name of the Most High my Abba, as the Most High spake unto David my father, saying, Thy son, whom I will set upon thy throne, in thy room he shall build an house unto my name. Verse 6. Now therefore command that they hew me cedar trees out of Lebanon, and my servants shall be with thy servants, and unto thee will I give hire for thy servants, according to all that thou shalt appoint. For thou knowest that there is not among us any that can skill to hew timber like unto the Sidonians.
All right, so we see that Solomon is making this pact with Hiram to go and hew this timber so that they can go and build this house. Let's drop that if you'll get Second Chronicles 7 and 1. APT, John. We got a lot we want to cover, a lot of points we want to hit, so we're going to try to go through it pretty quickly. But you definitely want to read all of these in this context on your own time. But we see Solomon at this moment began the building of the tabernacle. He made a pact with Hiram, and to have some of Solomon's servants and some of Hiram's servants go into the woods of Lebanon and chop down trees, bring that timber to bring it to the house of the Most High in Jerusalem, so they could start building this great and glorious house. Now, over time, over the course of many years, this house was completed. And they began to offer sacrifices in this house, the house of the Most High. Let's pick that up. Let's fast forward a little bit from when when Solomon started, all the way until that time they had just completed building this house. Let's see what Israel, what the nation, did in this house. They didn't just build a house to go out on street corners and yell and teach the people. That's not what they did. They built a house so they could dwell in there to do a specific thing. 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verse 1.
Now when Solomon had made an end of praying, the fire came down from heaven and consumed the burnt offering and the sacrifices, and the glory of the Most High filled the house.
All right, so the Most High rained fire down from heaven when Solomon finished his house. And it consumed the sacrifice and filled the whole entire house, the whole temple or tabernacle that Solomon had built. Read on.
Verse 2. And the priests could not enter into the house of the Most High because the glory of the Most High filled the Most High's house.
All right, so it was so much smoke that even the priests couldn't enter in. The priests are used to burning stuff up and burning up and seeing that big smoke. It was so much they couldn't even enter in. Let's read on.
Verse 3. And when all the children of Israel saw how the fire came down and the glory of the Most High upon the house, they bowed themselves with their faces to the ground upon the pavement and worshiped and praised the Most High, saying, for he is good, for his mercy endureth forever.
So this is what Israel did with his house, with his tabernacle. Not just to stay in, not just to live in, but to give sacrifices to the Most High. This is why Solomon built that house. Let's continue on.
Verse 4. And the king and all the people offered sacrifices before the Most High. And King Solomon offered a sacrifice of 22,000 oxen and 120,000 sheep. So the king and all the people dedicated the house of Abba. All the priests waited on their offices, the Levites also with instruments of music of the Most High, which David the king had made to praise the Most High, because his mercy endureth forever. When David praised by their ministry, and the priests sounded trumpets before them, all Israel stood. Moreover, Solomon hallowed the middle of the court, that there be before the house of the Most High. For there he offered burnt offerings, and the fat of the peace offering, because the brazen altar which Solomon had made was not able to receive the burnt offering, and the meat offering, and the fat.
All right, so Solomon built this great, large house. And this altar was not like a small little thing. This thing was huge. And they offered so many sacrifices on that day that they finished it. They couldn't even put them all on the altar. They had to go and save some for later. That altar, once again, was huge. It was probably like the size of a bus. Talk about that many offerings that they were putting on there that wouldn't even fit on that altar because of what they were doing in that house. That was the purpose of this tabernacle that Solomon built. It was to give those sacrifices to the Most High. And this was that glory to Israel. This was that glorious thing. And this is when the Most High came down as fire to consume that sacrifice. That's the theme we see consistently throughout the scriptures, that the Most High wanted his sacrifice. And he himself would come down or bring forth fire down to consume that sacrifice. Let's drop that. Let's get 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 1, priest Azariah, and then APT, John, if you'll hold Sirach, or Ecclesiasticus in the Apocrypha, 49, verse 4. So now, over the course of time, once again, we're kind of fast forwarding through our history. Time won't allow us to have a full-on lesson. So we're kind of fast forwarding. We see David, during his reign, fought against many enemies, but when he had rest, he decided he wanted to build a house to the Most High. And the Most High said, not with you, but with your son. And he did it. His son did it and spent years building that house. And when it was completed, they offered sacrifices to the Most High. So much so, the house couldn't even receive it. The priest couldn't even come in because of how much smoke was burning up from that altar. But over time, unfortunately, this tranquility, this peace of the peace offerings did not always last. Unfortunately, throughout the course of time, throughout our history, there was an ebb and flow. There were highs and lows. There were points where we were up high, just like in Solomon's day. And there were times where we went real low, just like right after, at the end of Solomon's life, as we're about to see here. Let's get that 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 1.
But King Solomon loved many strange women, together with a daughter of Pharaoh, women of the Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Zidonians, and Hittites, of the nations concerning which the Most High said unto the children of Israel, Ye shall not go into them, neither shall they come in unto you, for surely they will turn away your heart after their gods. Solomon clave unto these in love.
So this mighty, righteous, wise Solomon, the same one that built that great tabernacle, ended up falling in love with these strange women, with these women of other nations. Started looking at Becky instead of Hilpazah. We looked at these other nations, or Solomon did, and started lusting after them and desiring them and brought them into his house. And they started converting and perverting him. Let's jump to verse 4.
For it came to pass, when Solomon was old, that his wives turned away his heart after other gods.
So now as Solomon got older and got a little more weaker and probably dealt with them bickering at him for 30, 40 years, he said, you know what, all right, whatever. We'll do whatever to your God. If you'll get off my back, we'll do it. Let's read on.
And his heart was not perfect with the Most High his Abba, as was the heart of David his father.
All right, so David's heart was always pure with the Most High. Even though David did slip and fall, he never went and said, I'm going to worship another idol, or I'm going to worship an idol. He always worshiped the Most High. Unfortunately, Solomon allowed the worship of idols to go down in his reign, in his kingdom. Let's jump to verse 7.
Then did Solomon build an high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, and the hill that is before Jerusalem, and for Molech, the abomination of the children of Ammon. And likewise did he for all his strange wives, which burnt incense and sacrifice unto their gods.
Jump to verse 11. So we see that Solomon allowed places to be built for these idols that were surrounding the temple. Now, he didn't go into the temple and defile that, but he went to these hills over here in Hebron or Gilead or wherever and allowed temples to be built for these other nations' idols. And he allowed his wives to go and burn incense. They would come back and crawl back into his bed like, yeah, I had a good day, baby. All the while they went and worshiped, committed the greatest fornication of all, worshiping something other than the Most High. Let's read on.
Verse 11. Wherefore the Most High said unto Solomon, for as much as this done of thee, and thou hast not kept my covenant and my statutes, which I commanded thee, I will surely rend the kingdom from thee, and I will give it to thy servant.
So the Most High said, because you did this great abomination, you allowed idolatry to go down in this holy land that was to not be polluted. I'm going to take the kingdom and rend it from you, or rip it from you. Now, I'm not going to do it from your hands. I'm going to punish you. I'm going to send you into wars, which you never had to do. I'm going to have you fight your own battles. I'm going to have tribulations go on in your time. But because of my mercy, my grace to your father David, I'm not going to rip it from your hands. But your son, now he's going to get it. Let's read on.
Verse 12. Notwithstanding in thy days, I will not do it for David, thy father's sake, but I will rend it out of the hand of thy son.
All right. So we'll drop that and go to Sirach. Now, this ended up being the domino effect for the rest of the time that the children of Israel had their own independent kingdom, where you had this righteous king that brought forth such abominations in Israel that you had that reverberating effect of other kings coming up being wicked, being abominable, and bringing forth abominations. So much so that out of the 20-some kings of Judah and Israel, all the ones of Israel were wicked. You know, obviously the Most High rent the kingdom, as you say. He split it into two, and had Israel going to the north and Judah stay in the south. And of all the kings of Israel, they were all wicked. None of them was righteous. And out of Judah, out of the 20-something kings that they had, only 3 were righteous, and only 2 after Solomon. Let's get down to Sirach chapter 49. You can pick up verse 4.
All, except David and Hezekiah's and Josiah's, were defective.
All the kings of Judah, except for David, who came before Solomon, and then Hezekiah, or Ezekiel's in the Greek, and Josiah's, or Josiah in Hebrew, were defective. All of them fell short and were not righteous. It's like driving a car and it's got some defect. Let's say one tire is bigger than the other. You're bumping on the road. Or let's say the steering wheel just locks up while you're driving. Or let's say the brakes just stop working. This is the types of people you had ruling the children of Israel. They had a few screws loose, so to speak. And these people ruled the nation. Only David, Hezekiah, and Josiah were righteous. Let's continue on.
For they forsook the law of the Most High. Even the kings of Judah fell.
So all the kings of Judah failed except these 3, David, Hezekiah, and Josiah. Let's read on.
Verse 5. Therefore he gave their power unto others, and their glory to a strange nation. They burnt the chosen city of the sanctuary, and made the streets desolate. according to the prophecy of Jeremiah.
All right, so according to the prophecy of Jeremiah, because of the wickedness of the kings of Judah, all the majority of the kings being wicked, the Most High decided to burn that holy city, destroy the sanctuary, and give their glory, their honor unto a strange nation. So we're going to this history before we actually go back to 2nd Ezra to get that full understanding of it. Let's drop that. If Priest Azariah, you'll get 1 Kings chapter 16, and then we're going to go to 2 Kings 16. But let's start off in 1 Kings 16, chapter 29, and then if APT, John, you'll get 2 Chronicles chapter 29, verse 1. So let's go and pick it up as we're fast forwarding, doing a brief run through of our history during that period of the kings, starting with David, going up until the end, Abba willing. Let's show what was written in Sirach chapter 49, that indeed many of these kings were wicked. 1 Kings chapter 16, verse 29.
And in the 38th year of Asa, king of Judah, began Ahab, the son of Omri, to reign over Israel. And Ahab, the son of Omri, reigned over Israel in Samaria 22 years. And Ahab, the son of Omri, did evil in the sight of the Most High, above all that were before him.
So this is one of the kings of Israel rising up, Ahab, to come and bring forth some wickedness. He did wickedness in the sight of the Most High, and he did it casually. He did it like it was nothing, as the scriptures are going to say. Let's read on.
Verse 31. And it came to pass, as if it had been a light thing for him to walk in the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, that he took to wife Jezebel, the daughter of Ethbaal, king of Zidonians, and went and served Baal and worshipped him.
All right, so now we see Ahab went and married this Gentile Jezebel. And as a brief side note, we'll park here for a second. Jezebel wasn't this great harlot just going around sleeping with everybody, as it has devolved into in conventional Christianity. And even our own Israelite people end up saying the same thing. Jezebel was something else. Jezebel encouraged the true fornication, like we had briefly mentioned earlier, like we had touched on, that the prophets will be killed, the priests will be exiled, and that all of Israel will worship not the Most High, but they shall worship my God. They shall worship Baal, the Lord of the Zidonians, instead of the Most High, Lord of Israel. This was the fornication that Jezebel brought them in. And Ahab took it like a light thing. It was light to have this queen of the Gentiles come and start ruling Israel rather than him, the man, do it. And he ended up setting up temples and places for Baal. He set up groves and started worshiping these Ashari poles, or what has become the modern day Christmas tree. He set up all these abominations, and he did it through the strength of Jezebel. This was her great fornication. Once again, not she was going around sleeping with any man that knocked on the door, but that she was bringing forth idolatry in Israel. Let's continue on.
Verse 32. And he reared up an altar for Baal in the house of Baal, which he had built in Samaria.
So he, in his northern kingdom, built up a house for this idol that Jezebel set up, and he reared up an altar in that house. Let's read on.
Verse 33. And Ahab made a grove, and Ahab did more to provoke the Most High, our Abba of Israel, to anger than all the kings of Israel that were before him.
All right, let's go to 2 Kings chapter 16 and 1. So we see Ahab set up this abomination in Israel, and it angered and enraged the Most High, just like all the kings of Israel did. Now let's look at some of the kings of Judah. Let's look at some of them that brought forth this great travail, this great tribulation in the nation of Israel and Judah. 2 Kings chapter 16, verse 1.
In the 17th year of Pekah, the son of Remaliah, Ahaz, the son of Jotham, king of Judah, began to reign.
So now we see another king, not Ahab, but Ahaz, coming up in Judah to reign. Now, they might as well be the same because they're both wicked. Let's continue on.
Verse 2. 20 years old was Ahaz when he began to reign, and reigned 16 years in Jerusalem, and did not that which was right in the sight of the Most High, his Abba, like David his father. but he walked in the way of the kings of Israel.
So he walked in the exact same ways of the kings of Israel. Like Ahab that was coming as well, that came before him. He walked in the exact same ways. Let's read on.
Verse 3, but he walked in the way of the kings of Israel, yea, and made his son to pass through the fire, according to the abominations of the heathen, whom the Most High cast out from before the children of Israel. And he sacrificed and burnt incense in the high places, and on the hills, and under every green tree.
All right, so Ahaz came and passed his children through the fire, or offered sacrifices of his children unto these idols, unto Molech. He burnt them in fire. He burnt incense unto idols in the high places rather than in the temple that Solomon had built. Solomon, one of his great forefathers, had built. He ended up following after the ways of Israel rather than the ways of David, his father, in worshiping the Most High and the Most High only. Let's continue on.
Verse 5, then Rezin, king of Syria, and Pekah, son of Remaliah, king of Israel, came up to Jerusalem to war. And they besieged Ahaz, but could not overcome him. At that time, Rezin, king of Syria, recovered Elath of Syria, and drave the Jews from Elath. And the Syrians came to Elath and dwelt there unto this day.
So we see some of the wickedness that these people did. The children of Israel joined in with the Syrians to go and besiege their brother, Judah, and besiege them, and they waged war with the Syrians to defeat this king of Judah, Ahaz. Let's continue on.
Verse 7, so Ahaz sent messengers to Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, saying, I am thy servant and thy son. Come up and save me out of the hand of the king of Syria, and out of the hand of the king of Israel, which rise up against me. And Ahaz took the silver and gold that was found in the house of the Most High, and in the treasure of the king's house, and sent it for a present to the king of Assyria.
So we see that Ahaz, instead of praying to the Most High and saying, please, Abba, deliver me, he said, you know what, I'm going to go. Y'all got the Syrians. I'm going to get the Assyrians to come and help me out. So he goes to the Assyrians and says, I'm going to give you a tribute. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go into the temple that I've never been in before, and I'm going to go and strip down some of the gold, some of the metals, some of the precious things from the temple of the Most High, and I'm going to give it to the Assyrians so we could be in league with one another. This was some of the wickedness that the children of Israel or the children of Judah were doing. Let's jump down to verse 17 for time's sake, Priest Azariah.
And King Ahaz cut off the borders of the bases, and removed the laver from off them, and took down the sea from off the brazen oxen that were under it, and put it upon a pavement of stones. And the covert for the Shabbat that they had built in the house, the king's entry without, turned he from the house of the Most High for the king of Assyria.
So he actually went to the house of the Most High and started destroying some of the altars, destroyed the great major laver, took down the oxen and put the laver itself down on the pavement, the floor of the temple, which used to sit on these great brazen oxen. He took those down and smelted them down, also he could give them to the king of Assyria as his tribute. He went and essentially filleted the temple. Instead of using it for the worship of the Most High, used it as a tribute to this Gentile leader. Let's jump down to verse 20.
And Ahaz slept with his fathers, and was buried with his fathers in the city of David. And Hezekiah his son reigned in his stead.
All right, so this wicked king lived his life wickedly and died, and they buried him where they buried David. And now he had a son named Hezekiah. Now this is that same Hezekiah we read about in Sirach chapter 49, this righteous king, one of the ones who was not defective, who was found glorious. Let's look at his life and see what he did in some of this time of travail. Let's get that in 2 Chronicles chapter 29, verse 1. After this wicked king Ahaz came and essentially started tearing down the house of the Most High piece by piece, Hezekiah came back and said, we need to reverse this. We need to redo this. Hezekiah was one of those righteous kings who was not defective in this time of tribulation. Let's get that 2 Chronicles 29 and 1.
Hezekiah began to reign when he was 25 years old, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Abiah, the daughter of Zechariah. And he did that which was right in the sight of the Most High, according to all that David his father had done.
So Hezekiah did that which was right in the sight of the Most High. Instead of what his direct father Ahaz did, he did what one of his great-great-great-grandfathers did, David, and did right in the sight of the Heavenly Father. Let's read on.
Verse 3. He, in the first year of his reign, in the first month, opened the doors of the house of the Most High and repaired them.
So look at the first thing that this righteous king did. It didn't say he went and fought the Assyrians and tore them down or anything like that. It said he went, the first thing he did in the first year was go into the doors of the tabernacle and repair them. Repair the doors that Ahaz had torn down. He was walking in the ways of his father David, or his forefather David, who set up the temple, who set up the course of worship, which Most High will touch on later. He went and restored this tabernacle where they did the worship of the Most High. Let's continue on.
Verse 4. And he brought in the priests and the Levites and gathered them together into the east street and said unto them, Hear me, ye Levites, sanctify now yourselves and sanctify the house of the Most High Abba of your fathers, and carry forth the filthiness out of this holy place.
So once again, doing the same thing that David did. David set up the Levites, the priests in their course to give service to the Most High. Hezekiah is doing the exact same thing. Setting up the priests to give service to the Most High in their courses, hallowing or holding, making them holy to the Most High so they could serve him. Let's read on.
Verse 6. For our fathers have trespassed and done that which was evil in the eye of the Most High our Abba, and have forsaken him, and have turned away their faces from the habitation of the Most High, and turned their backs. Also, they have shut up the doors of the porch, and put out the lamps, and have not burnt incense, nor offered burnt offerings in the holy place unto the Abba of Israel. Wherefore the wrath of the Most High was upon Judah and Jerusalem, and he had delivered them to trouble, to astonishment, and to hissing. And ye see with your eyes, for lo, our fathers have fallen by the sword, and our sons and our daughters and our wives are in captivity for this.
All right, so Hezekiah is looking at our history and saying we were destroyed. The Most High was angry with us because we did not do what the Most High required. And he brought us into captivity. He brought wars against us. He brought enemies to fight up against us because we started doing the things of the nations rather than things the Most High gave to us. He promised us that we would be doing, worshiping him and him alone with the sacrifices in this holy city. So now it's time to get right, to get back on course, get back on track. Get rid of all the abominations, take out all the wicked stuff that's in the temple, repair them, repair the breaches, and start getting busy with the worship of the Most High. Let's continue on.
Verse 10. Now it is in my heart to make a covenant with the Most High Abba of Israel, that his fierce wrath may turn away from us. My sons, be not now negligent, for the Most High has chosen you to stand before him, to serve him, and that ye should minister unto him and burn incense.
All right, so we're going to drop that and get 2 Kings chapter 21, verse 1, Priest Azariah. 2 Kings chapter 21, verse 1. So we see throughout all this travail, all this tribulation, all these dark times, the children of Israel or the kings of Israel bring forth wickedness, destroying the temple or defiling the temple, setting up idol temples all around in the holy city, burning incense to idols. You had a righteous king bring forth light to Israel. Hezekiah came forth to repair what his father Ahaz did and to set a light and example to the children of Israel. He was one of those kings that set up the temple, instituted the priest again to give worship in due season. He was that king that invited even the children of Israel to come to a great Passover, a make-up Passover, because they had not done it in decades. Since the times of Solomon, they had not been doing the Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And he invited them down to come and do it. And he set up once again that worship unto the Most High, and his heart was pure and perfect. He never turned aside to an idol. He actually went and destroyed some of those groves that the children of Israel had set, or that his forefathers had set up in Judea. He went and destroyed the altars, destroyed their houses to these other idols, and set up only the worship of the Most High. Now, unfortunately, his reign was long, but in the totality of all the span, it wasn't that long. In the totality of all the kings, This was one man that came forth to try to clean up the mess that many men had done before him and men would do after him. Let's pick it up in 2 Kings chapter 21, and we can pick it up in verse 1.
Manasseh was 12 years old when he began to reign, and reigned 55 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Hephzibah. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Most High, after the abominations of the heathen, whom the Most High cast out before the children of Israel. For he built up again the high places, which Hezekiah his father had destroyed.
So unfortunately, that righteousness, that light that Hezekiah had brought forth only lasted for his lifetime. Once he passed away and his son Manasseh took the reins, he went wicked. And he said, oh, you want to correct the righteousness? I'm going to do that type of wickedness and some on top of that. Let's read on.
And he reared up altars for Baal and made a grove, as did Ahab, king of Israel, and worshipped all the host of heaven and served them.
So he followed after Ahab, that king of Israel that we mentioned that was married to Jezebel. I guess I said it right, the wife of Jezebel. This man submitted to this Gentile and became essentially her servant. And she ruled and dwelt in Israel and brought forth this wickedness, and he allowed it to happen. Manasseh was doing the same thing and even worse. He worshipped the host of heaven, the queen of heaven, worshipped Baal and set up idols and groves to them, set up the places that Hezekiah had destroyed. Actually went to the locations where Hezekiah destroyed it and said, I'm going to build that thing back up. Hezekiah, my father, he wasn't doing things right. I need to build this place back up. We were partying in that place. We need to set that back up. And what else did he do? Read on.
Verse 4. And he built up altars in the house of the Most High.
He said it wasn't enough that we got, temples for idols all around Jerusalem. We need to go in Jerusalem. We need to not even go into Jerusalem. We need to go in the temple and set up some idols. We want to get our party on to Molech in the temple of the Most High. We can't be having this righteousness. We need to have some wickedness going on. Let's read on.
Of which the Most High said, in Jerusalem will I put my name. And he built altars for all the host of heaven in the two courts of the house of the Most High.
So he set up altars for the idols, for the queen, the host of heaven, in the house of the Most High, in the two courts, in the sanctuary where you have the golden altar, and in the porch where you have the brazen altar. He set up idol altars on top of those hallowed altars unto the Most High. A great abomination inside the Most High. It was bad enough that they had set up idols all around. Now you're coming in the house of the Most High with this abomination. Let's read on.
Verse 6. And he made his son pass through the fire and observed times and used enchantments and dealt with familiar spirits and wizards. He wrought much wickedness in the sight of the Most High to provoke him to anger.
So he started doing magic tricks and soothsaying, and it dealt with wizards and witches and psychics, and dealt with familiar spirits, trying to access the spiritual realm without going the proper way that the Most High set forth. Manasseh did some great wickedness, and it was even worse coming directly off the reins of Hezekiah, who did such great righteousness in Israel, in Judah. Let's read on.
And he set a graven image of the grove that he had made in the house, of which the Most High said to David and to Solomon his son, in this house, in Jerusalem, which I have chosen out of all tribes of Israel, will I put my name forever.
So in that very same house that Solomon had built decades before, or hundreds of years before, Manasseh came and set up idolatry in that same house. Let's read on.
Verse 8. Neither will I make the feet of Israel move any more out of the land which I gave their fathers, only if they will observe to do according to all that I have commanded them, and according to all the law that my servant Moses commanded them. But they hearkened not, and Manasseh seduced them to do more evil. Then did the nations whom the Most High destroyed before the children of Israel.
So Manasseh has seduced or enticed the children of Israel to do even more wickedness than what the nations had done. The nations that were in that land before Israel, when they came, he caused them to do even more wickedness than them. Let's read on.
Verse 10. And the Most High spake by his servant the prophet, saying, because Manasseh king of Judah had done these abominations and had done wickedly above all that the Amorites did, which were before him, and had made Judah also to sin with his idols. Therefore thus saith the Most High, Abba of Israel, behold, I am bringing such evil upon Jerusalem and Judah, that whosoever heareth of it, both his ears shall tingle. And I will stretch over Jerusalem the line of Samaria, and the plummet of the house of Ahab. And I will wipe Jerusalem as a man wipeth a dish, wiping it and turning it upside down.
All right, so the Most High said, because Judah and Manasseh had done such wickedness, I'm going to bring such a calamity on the children of Israel and the children of Judah that whoever hears it, their ears shall tingle. You'd be like, whoa, that's crazy what the Most High says he's going to do to them. He's going to take them like a nice dish, a platter. Think of a nice, beautiful cake that somebody just made and it's on a nice dish. And flicked it off and flipped it upside down. That's what the Most High says he's going to do. It was this great, beautiful place, Jerusalem, and the temple that was in there. The Most High says he's just going to wipe it off the face of the earth, flip it upside down on his head, and bring forth such a destruction that people who heard of it would be like, whoa, I don't ever want to be that low. I don't ever want to be that bad as the children of Israel were. Let's continue on.
Verse 14. And I will forsake the remnant of mine inheritance and deliver them into the hand of their enemies, and they shall become a prey and a spoil to all their enemies, because they have done that which was evil in my sight, and have provoked me to anger since the day their fathers came forth out of Egypt, even unto this day.
So the Most High was very patient with them too. He said, even when I brought you out of Egypt, y'all were provoking me. Since then, y'all have been provoking me. And there were only a few that did righteous. And we had David and Hezekiah so far. And all the other kings that were in between, all of them did some wickedness. And all of them provoked the Most High. And he said, since that day, y'all been grieving me. I'm about to bring the hammer down on y'all. And hopefully y'all learn your lesson. Let's continue on. Let's go to the next chapter, Priest Azariah, 2 Kings, chapter 22 and verse 1. And then APT, John, you'll get Jeremiah, chapter 52 and 1. Now we see Manasseh had done some great high wickedness. And the Most High said, I'm going to destroy them because of Manasseh's sake. However, he was still patient, and he let some kings still come after Manasseh. You had Manasseh's son coming forth who was wicked. And then you had his grandson coming, which was Josiah, that one we read about who was righteous, who did righteous in the sight of the Most High. That's where we're going to pick it up. Once again, we're fast forwarding through the history just so we can get a glimpse of what's going on, so we can understand these prophecies that were written out. But let's pick that up with Josiah, the grandson of Manasseh, 2 Kings chapter 22 and verse 1.
Josiah was 8 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 31 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Jedidiah, the daughter of Adiah of Boskoth. And he did that which was right in the sight of the Most High, and walked in all the way of David his father, and turned not aside to the right hand or to the left. And it came to pass in the 18th year of King Josiah that the king sent Shaphan, the son of Azaliah, the son of Meshullam, the scribe, to the house of the Most High, saying, Go up to Hilkiah, the high priest, that he may sum the silver which is brought into the house of the Most High, which the keepers of the door have gathered of the people.
So Josiah rose up, this young man, and started bringing forth the righteousness of the Most High. He started reigning when he was 8. And 8 years later, he went and started bringing forth or setting up the temple again. At 16, he came and started repairing that temple that his grandfather Manasseh had utterly defiled. He sent a sum of money to the high priest so they could begin to build again. Let's read on.
Verse 5. And let them deliver it into the hand of the doers of the work that have the oversight of the house of the Most High. And let them give it to the doers of the work which is in the house of the Most High, to repair the breaches of the house, and to carpenters and builders and masons, and to buy timber and hewn stone to repair the house. Howbeit, there was no reckoning made with them of the money that was delivered into their hand, because they dealt faithfully.
So he had these priests working faithfully and dedicated to serving the Most High, and built and got carpenters and builders and masons, everybody to come and reconstruct this temple that Manasseh defiled and destroyed. Let's read on.
Verse 8, and Hilkiah the high priest said unto Shaphan the scribe, I have found the book of the law in the house of the Most High. And Hilkiah gave the book to Shaphan, and he read it. And Shaphan the scribe came to the king and brought the king word again and said, Thy servants have gathered the money that was found in the house, and have delivered it into the hand of them that do the work, that have the oversight of the house of the Most High. And Shaphan the scribe showed the king, saying, Hilkiah the priest hath delivered me a book. And Shaphan read it before the king.
So Shaphan came back and said, all right, everything you required was done. We went, took the money, got the people employed to go and build this temple again. We reconstructed it. We did those renovations and cleaned it out. We also found this book, though. We think you might want to read it, Josiah. I don't want to read it to you. I think you might want to read this. Let's read on.
Verse 11, and it came to pass, when the king had heard the words of the book of the law, that he rent his clothes. And the king commanded Hilkiah the priest, and Ahikam the son of Shaphan, and Achbor the son of Micaiah, and Shaphan the scribe, and Hazahiah, a servant of the king, saying, Go ye, inquire of the Most High for me, and for the people, and for all Judah, concerning the words of this book that is found. For great is the wrath of the Most High that is kindled against us, because our fathers have not hearkened unto the words of this book, to do according unto all that which is written concerning us.
So Josiah heard the writings that was in this book. He heard the writings of Moses, that he said, these curses shall come upon you because you went and worshiped other idols. He read the words of that prophet that came during the time of Manasseh and said, Manasseh, the Most High is going to destroy you all. The Most High is going to wipe you off the face of the planet, is what Josiah heard. And because that he rent his clothes, he was so upset because the Most High had promised and said, I am going to destroy this place. And Josiah knew, there's nothing I can do. I can be righteous in my time, but this punishment is still going to come, because there were wicked men before me, and there are going to be wicked men after me. I'm going to take this time and do righteous in my lifetime and pray for my resurrection. But for those after me, I know this calamity is going to befall us. So he went and besought the Most High and sought comfort of the Heavenly Father. But once again, we're fast forwarding. We see the righteous king once again doing what righteous kings do. He wasn't righteous because he, had great muscles and could was good with the sword and could throw a spear and kill 20 people. That's not why he was righteous. He was righteous because he went and repaired the tabernacle of the Most High, just like David did. Just like David set up the course in which the priest came to worship the Heavenly Father, Josiah did the same thing, just like his forefather Hezekiah had done, his great-grandfather Hezekiah, just like his great-great-great-great-grandfather David, and his forefather Solomon had done when he was righteous. Josiah set up and instituted the worship of the Most High in Jerusalem. Now, unfortunately, his grandfather Manasseh did not do so. And the kings after him, the rest of them were all wicked, as we saw in Sirach, that only David, Hezekiah, and Josiah were righteous. These were the only three who were not defective. The rest were found with some flaws, with some faults in them. Now let's fast forward and pick it up toward the end of the periods of the kings in Jeremiah chapter 52. APT John, Jeremiah chapter 52, and we'll start in the first verse.
Zedekiah was 120 years old when he began to reign. He reigned 11 years in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Hamutal, the daughter of Jeremiah of Libnah. And he did that which was evil in the eyes of the Most High, according to all that Jehoiakim had done. For through the anger of the Most High, it came to pass in Jerusalem and Judah, till he had cast them out from his presence, that Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babylon.
So Zedekiah was actually, once again, at the end of the glory days, so to speak. There was tribulation all throughout this time. But he was toward the end, the decline of Israel. At this point, the Babylonians had already essentially taken over, but they allowed Jerusalem to still be not independent, but kind of be like a tributary. So they would do their own thing, but they would give tribute to the king. They would give, whatever amount of their grain, of their money, all that to the king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar. And the Most High said, nah, this is not sufficient. I'm going to make sure y'all get destroyed. So he stirred up a spirit in Zedekiah to rebel and buck up against Nebuchadnezzar. Let's read on.
Verse 4. And it came to pass in the 9th year of his reign, in the 10th month, in the 10th day of the month, that Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came, he and all his army, against Jerusalem, and pitched against it, and built forts against it round about.
So Nebuchadnezzar was like, oh, you're going to stop my tribute. You're going to stop giving me what we agreed to. You know what? I'm going to besiege this whole city. And the Most High was with Nebuchadnezzar. He was not with Zedekiah, because Zedekiah was wicked, because our forefathers were wicked. There was a great time of tribulation where sometimes we were righteous, but majority of the time we were wicked. And in that time, the Most High said, I'm going to dwell with Nebuchadnezzar to destroy you, Jerusalem, to destroy you, to wipe you off the face of the earth. And he had Nebuchadnezzar besiege this city, Jerusalem. They set up forts and engines and everything needed for that siege, and they did it for about a year and some months. Let's read on.
Verse 5. So the city was besieged until the 11th year of King Zedekiah.
So they started in the 9th year, in the 10th month, and it carried over into the 11th year in the 4th month. It was a long siege where nothing was coming into Jerusalem. Nobody was going out, nobody was going in, and they started to begin to be starved. Let's read on.
Verse 6. And in the 4th month, in the 9th day of the month, the famine was sore in the city, so that there was no bread for the people of the land. Then the city was broken up, and all the men of war fled, and went forth out of the city by night, by the way of the gate between the two walls, which was by the king's garden. Now the Chaldeans were by the city round about, and they went by the way of the plain.
All right, so we see that they had all essentially were starved out. There was starvation. And at this time in the 4th month, they came, the Babylonians came and invaded. They broke up the city, broke down the walls, and came in, and the armies of Jerusalem had no power, could not muster a fight against the Babylonians. So they went and essentially were just chased off. Let's read on.
Verse 8. But the army of the Chaldeans pursued after the king, and overtook Zedekiah in the plains of Jericho, and all his army was scattered from him. Then they took the king and carried him up unto the king of Babylon to Riblah in the land of Hamath, where he gave judgment upon him. And the king of Babylon slew the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes. He slew also all the princes of Judah and Riblah.
So he went, captured their armies after pursuing them, took all those who surrendered captive, and he took Zedekiah and was like, I'm going to show you a lesson. I'm going to learn you a lesson, son. Give me your child, your children, your sons. Now I'm going to kill them. I'm going to destroy them before your face. Then I'm going to pluck out your eyes. This is going to be the last thing you ever see on earth. You want to come up against Babylon. I'm going to show you what Babylon's going to do. But in actuality, he came up against the Most High. And the Most High came and punished him through the hands of the Babylonians. Let's continue on.
Verse 11. Then he put out the eyes of Zedekiah, and the king of Babylon bound him in chains and carried him into Babylon and put him in prison to the day of his death.
Now we see that Zedekiah was bound with chains, eyeless, blind, and carried over to Babylon to be a prisoner, a slave, until he died. Let's read on.
Verse 12. Now in the 5th month, in the 10th day of the month, which was the 19th year of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came Nebuzaradan, captain of the guard, which served the king of Babylon in Jerusalem, and burned the house of the Most High.
So it wasn't enough that they just killed the kings and took people captive. They went into the city and burnt up Jerusalem to the ground. Let's see exactly everything they burnt and destroyed. Read on.
And the king's house, and all the houses of Jerusalem, and all the houses of the great men, burned he with fire.
So we see that Nebuchadnezzar sent his guard, and he went and he burnt down the entire city. He burnt down the temple of the Most High that Solomon had built. He burnt it down until it was ash to the ground. Then he took the king's house and destroyed that. Then he took all the houses of the nobles, the great men of Israel, and utterly destroyed it, utterly leveled it to the ground till it was nothing. Let's read on.
Verse 14. And all the army of the Chaldeans that were with the captains of the guard break down all the walls of Jerusalem round about. Then Nebuchadnezzar, the captain of the guard, carried away captains certain of the poor of the people, and the residue of the people that remained in the city, and those that fell away, that fell to the king of Babylon, and the rest of the multitude. But Nebuchadnezzar, the captain of the guard, left certain of the poor of the land for vine dressers and for husbandmen. Also the pillars of brass that were in the house of the Most High.
So we see that Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard for Nebuchadnezzar, took the nobles and carried them all the way captive, carried them as slaves into Babylon. And he left some of the poor, the rest of the people, to be tributaries, to harvest the land so that they could take that up to Babylon too, so that they could oppress this land further. So they had these people dressing the land, dressing Jerusalem, going to the crops and tending to them so they could give that tribute up to Babylon. Let's read on.
And the bases, and the brazen sea.
Read that verse again.
Verse 17. Also the pillars of brass that were in the house of the Most High, and the bases, and the brazen sea that was in the house of the Most High, the Chaldeans break, and carried all the brass of them to Babylon.
So they didn't just completely destroy the house. They took all those vessels that were in there. They took all those goods, everything that was in there, and took it. They took all the metals, the precious metals, the pillars made of brass, the silver, the brazen sea, the great laver where the priests were baptizing. They took that, smelted it down, brought it up to Babylon. Read on.
Verse 18. The cauldrons also, and the shovels, and the snuffers, and the bowls, and the spoons, and all the vessels of brass wherewith they ministered, took they away. And the basins, and the fire pans, and the bowls, and the cauldrons, and the candlesticks, and the spoons, and the cups, that which was of gold in gold, and that which was silver in silver, took the captain of the guard away. The two pillars, one sea, and 12 brazen bulls that were under the bases, which King Solomon had made in the house of the Most High. The brass of all these vessels were without weight.
So they had so much brass in them, they couldn't even weigh them. And they took all of that out of the temple, burnt it down, destroyed it, and took all those vessels and carried them over to Babylon. And this was the end of that period of the kings, where the Babylonians came and utterly destroyed and leveled the city. Jerusalem was essentially no more. Jerusalem had perished. Jerusalem was an afterthought at this point. Now, with this understanding this period of the kings, we can go back to 2nd Ezra chapter 10, Priest Azariah, and we'll pick it up where we left off. 2nd Ezra chapter 10, verse 25. So we saw this woman that had a son and nourished him through great travail, and he died. He was going to the marriage chamber and then died, passed away, and she was mourning and lamenting. And where we left off, she had essentially shapeshift. She turned into something completely different. She was no longer a woman. She was something else. Her face began to shine. Let's pick it up and see what she became, and let's look at Uriel, the great angel, giving that understanding to Ezra. So let's pick it up in 2nd Ezra chapter 10, verse 25.
And it came to pass, while I was talking with her, behold, her face upon a sudden shined exceedingly, and her countenance glistered, so that I was afraid of her, and mused what it might be. And behold, suddenly she made a great cry, very fearful, so that the earth shook at the noise of the woman. And I looked, and behold, the woman appeared unto me no more, but there was a city builded, and a large place showed itself from the foundations. Then was I afraid, and cried with a loud voice, and said.
So this woman that Ezra was trying to comfort became no more a woman, but she became a great bright light and became a huge big city on a great foundation. And Ezra became afraid. What was this? I saw a shapeshift. This woman No longer is a woman. She just turned into a city and cried and made this big scream. Now he's afraid. Now he's unsure what's going on. Read on.
Verse 28. Where is Uriel the angel who came unto me at the first? For he hath caused me to fall into many trances, and mine end is turned into corruption, and my prayer to rebuke.
So he thought, he went off. He thought, yo, what's going on? This Uriel brought me into some trances, some visions where I saw some things. But I'm into this one. I don't know what's going on. Uriel, where are you? What's going on? Did I go and trespass and go off the deep end somehow? Let's read on.
Verse 29. And as I was speaking these words, behold, he came unto me and looked upon me. And lo, I lay as one that had been dead, and mine understanding was taken from me. And he took me by the right hand and comforted me, and set me upon my feet, and said unto me, What aileth thee? And why art thou so disquieted? And why is thine understanding troubled, and the thoughts of thine heart? And I said, Because thou hast forsaken me, and yet I did according to thy words. And I went into the field, and lo, I have seen and yet see, that I am not able to express. And he said unto me, Stand up manfully, and I will advise thee.
So he said, what's going on? I thought you told me to go to this field, and now I'm off. Satan's got me and shown me some abominations. And Uriel saying, stand up, man. I'm going to show you what this is. I'm going to show you what this vision is that you just saw. Let's read on.
Verse 34. Then said I, Speak on, my Lord, and me. Only forsake me not, lest I die frustrate of my hope. For I have seen that I knew not, and hear that I do not know. Or is my sense deceived? Or is my soul in a dream?
So he said, I heard something I don't understand. I've seen something I don't get, I don't perceive. My senses, are they dull? Am I dreaming something that I just some weird thoughts? Let's read on.
Verse 37. Now therefore I beseech thee, that thou wouldst show thy servant of this vision. He answered me then and said, Hear me, I shall inform thee, and tell thee wherefore thou art afraid. For the highest will reveal many secret things unto thee. He has seen that thy way is right, for that thou sorrowest continually for thy people, and makest great lamentation for Zion.
So he said, I've seen that your way, your mind is right, Ezra. You are constantly making sorrow for your people and for Zion, for Israel, and you did not succumb to a woman travailing to her child. But I'm going to show you the understanding that this woman also was right. Let's continue on.
Verse 40. This therefore is the meaning of the vision which thou lately sawest. Thou sawest a woman mourning, and thou beganest to comfort her. But now seest thou the likeness of the woman no more. For there appeared unto thee a city builded. And whereas she told thee of the death of her son, this is the solution. This woman whom thou sawest is Zion.
This woman that Ezra saw is Zion, is Israel, is Jerusalem, is the place of worship unto the Most High. It's the people who worship our Abba. This was the same woman that we saw earlier in Revelations 12 and 13, that this woman was Israel. And this woman had the sun and the moon as her clothing. Not just she was regal, she was good looking. She had the morning and evening oblations daily going on, the daily continual oblations. And that crown of the 12 stars, as we broke it down, over the 12 months, every month you give oblations unto the Most High. This was what that woman was to do. She was to give those oblations continually. This was that covenant being set up to give worship in due season. Let's read on.
And whereas she said unto thee, even she whom thou seest as a city builded, whereas I say, she said unto thee, that she hath been 30 years barren. Those are 30 years wherein there was no offering made in her. But after 30 years, Solomon builded the city and offered offerings, and then bare the barren a son.
All right, so now we see the first thing we went through after Revelations, after going through Ezra. We see now that process of time where David said, I want to build a house, and no house was built. And the Most High said, over the process of time, I shall take your son Solomon, and he shall build the house. This is that 30 years that's being spoken about. That time from David wanting to build the house to the time that Solomon actually did it to bring forth those oblations. And that day where that massive oblations were being done, those massive sacrifices were being done, where the altar could not receive it, that was the birth of this son. That was that time sacrifices were being done in the house of the Most High. That was this barren Zion bringing forth that son. Let's read on.
Verse 47. And whereas she told thee that she nourished him with labor, that was the dwelling in Jerusalem.
Now that nourishing him with labor was all that we went through after that period of the kings, or through that period of the kings. We had these wicked men rising up to be kings of Israel and Judea. You had the kingdom splitting. You had times of travail and trouble. Brothers were at war with brothers. There was separation, division. Wicked men, Gentiles coming to bring forth tribulation against the children of Israel. You had that going on. But in the midst of that, you still had a few righteous people rising up to bring forth that nourishment to the children of Israel. You had Hezekiah and Josiah coming up to rebuild the tabernacle, to nourish them, to show them the way, to bring that light, nourishing them with that labor, bring forth that sustenance that they needed to come and worship the Most High, to be rich and great as the Most High had ordained them to be. But unfortunately, it can only work for so long. As it started to grow, it waxed worse and worse. It got nourished, but some of that nourishment was not always good. Some of those people rose up to bring forth wickedness rather than righteousness, as we saw with Manasseh. So that nourishment is that time of the kings. That great labor is the time of the kings. That nourishment is those righteous ones who rose up, Hezekiah and Josiah, to bring forth righteousness in the place of the Most High. Let's continue on.
Verse 48. But whereas she said unto thee, that my son coming into his marriage chamber happened to have a fail and died. This was the destruction that came to Jerusalem.
This was the destruction that we talked about. That this son was to come in the marriage chamber. But instead of doing that, he had slipped and fall and died. What is that marriage as well that they're talking about? If you could, APT John, get Jeremiah 31, and you can pick it up in verse 31. Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 31. We see the son was going to be married, was going to be in a union. But instead, he slipped and died. He had an accident, fell, and died. Instead of being in that union, that great union where they were going to have that great feast, that great festival. Let's get that in Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 31. APT, John.
Behold, the days come, said the Most High, that I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt. With my covenant they break.
All right, so we see that the Most High is prophesying through his prophet Jeremiah that he shall make a new covenant with them. And he's saying this old covenant they broke, the covenant of when I brought them out of Egypt. What we were looking at in the Kings, they broke this covenant time and time again. But that's not the point that we're looking at. Let's look at what the Most High says next. Read on.
Although I was a husband unto them, said the Most High.
The Most High said, I was a husband unto Israel. I was a husband unto Zion, unto this son that was being brought forth. These oblations, I was like a husband unto Israel, and they were to produce these oblations. That marriage that was being prophesied about in Ezra was them being unified with the Most High. Chief Priest did a class on the marriage of the Lamb, us being one through the Messiah. And Israel was about to go through that. They had that chance with Solomon and all those righteous kings to be unified with the Most High, but instead they went wicked and died. The Most High said, I'm going to kill this boy. Now, we as parents say that sometimes, all the time. I'm going to kill that boy. I'm going to kill her, or whatever. We're just going to ground her, spank her maybe, or whatever. The Most High was serious. I'm about to kill this little boy. You want to bring an idol into my house? All right, yeah, it's over with. You're going straight into the ground, straight into the grave. And the Most High did it, as we mentioned. The Babylonians came and overtook the city, sieged it, came and overtook the armies, and leveled the whole city to the ground. Jerusalem was just an ash heap after the Babylonians had finished with it. It was nothing. It was like a nice souffle on a great, nice dish, and somebody just tossed it to the side and threw the dish away. That was what the Most High did to Jerusalem. This was that destruction that came here that we're talking about in 2nd Ezra. Let's pick it up where we left off.
Verse 33.
Well, we can drop Jeremiah. Let's go back to 2nd Ezra. 2nd Ezra chapter 10, and I believe we're in verse 48.
But whereas she said unto thee, that my son coming into his marriage chamber happened to have a fail, and died, this was the destruction that came to Jerusalem.
So this was that destruction that we talked about with the Babylonians, that he failed, and that he died, slipped and fell and died, and was brought forth into this captivity of the Babylonians. Let's read on.
Verse 49. And behold, thou sawest her likeness, and because she mourned for her son, thou beganest to comfort her. And of these things which have chanced, these are to be open unto thee. For now the Most High seeth that thou art grieved unfeignedly, and sufferest from thy whole heart for her. So hath he showed thee the brightness of her glory, and the comeliness of her beauty.
All right, so we can drop right there, and if APT, John, you get 2nd Maccabees chapter 2, verse 1. So we see that Jerusalem was destroyed, and Ezra was mourning unfeigned for this city, for the holy tabernacle of the Most High that has fallen. And the Most High said, I will show you even greater things. I'll begin to show you prophecies that you didn't even imagine, because your heart was fixed on this holy city, this great land that has lost its heritage. And this woman was representing just that, representing a woman who was barren for 30 years, being the time of David to Solomon, when that temple was finally built, where no sacrifices were going down in that temple. And then you had a baby being born, which was the sacrifices, which was the oblations. And so much so that the altar could not receive it. It was a flourishing child. But then it went through great tribulations, and they still sought to nourish him, to have him grow up to be righteous. Was that time of the kings bring forth wickedness, but you had a few righteous kings standing up during that time. And after that, unfortunately, the child still died. The child died, and that was the captivity that was brought forth of the Babylonians, where they utterly destroyed Jerusalem and made it no more. Now, Israel has fallen at this point. We have fallen from this position, and then we even came back later and rose up again, but we fell again. Now, we must understand these things if we want to rise up. This is what the Most High raised us up to do, was to give sacrifices. Now, once again, this son that died, just like the Messiah, will be raised up again. And we need to be ready to heed this calling, to do what the Most High required us to do. We're not going to be raised up to go on the street corner and yell at people. We're not going to be raised up to have slaves and bed wenches. We're going to be raised up to do what the Most High required us to do at the beginning, at the first, to give these sacrifices. Let's pick it up in 2nd Maccabees chapter 2 and verse 1. APT, John. Yeah, 2nd Maccabees. We'll go straight to the point in chapter 2 and verse 1.
It is also found in the records that Jeremy the prophet commanded them that were carried away to take of the fire as it had been signified.
So we see Jeremy, or Jeremiah, who talked about this Babylonian captivity, is coming back to do some great things as well. Let's read on.
Verse 2. And how that the prophet, having given them the law, charged them not to forget the commandments of the Most High, and that they should not err in their minds when they see images of silver and gold with their ornaments, and with other such speeches exhorted he them that the law should not depart from their hearts.
So Jeremiah, before the Babylonians actually came and destroyed everything, he took a few things out. He took the Ark of the Covenant, and he took the altars, and he went and hid them. So the Babylonians could not utterly destroy them. They could not destroy the whole worship of the Most High. Now they leveled the city. There was no place to give worship, but these things were laid up for the latter days. And Jeremiah said, don't neglect these things. Although they are gone, they are taken away, they are destroyed, and I'm going to hide these until the end days. Keep these things in your chambers of imagery. Keep these things in your heart so that you may do them. We're just going to see somebody else said, another prophet said the same thing. Let's read on.
Verse 4. It was also contained in the same writings that the prophet, being warned of Abba, commanded the tabernacles and the ark to go with him. And he went forth into the mountain where Moses climbed up and saw the heritage of Abba.
So Jeremiah went to that same mountain, Mount Sinai, where Moses was, and took the ark of the tabernacle, took the altars, and hid them, and put them in a cave in this mountain so that the Babylonians could not utterly destroy them, so they could be preserved for the latter days. Let's read on.
Verse 5, and when Jeremiah came thither, he found an hollow cave, wherein he laid the tabernacle, and the ark, and the altar of incense, and so stopped the door. And some of those that followed him came to mark the way, but they could not find it.
So he went, closed up the cave, closed the door, covered his tracks. People came to follow him so they could mark where it was. And he came back and said this. Read on.
Verse 7, which then Jeremiah perceived, he blamed them, saying, as for that place, it shall be unknown until the time that Abba gather his people again together and receive them unto mercy.
Jeremiah said, what are you doing? Y'all trying to mark and put some breadcrumbs down so we can come back? No, you're not coming back to this, my man. The Most High is going to bring this back. He's going to gather the people. And he's going to tell them exactly where this is. But for y'all, this is not for you. This is for the end times, the latter days. Now think about that. We said that Jerusalem was destroyed, the child died, the child perished. But he shall be raised up, he shall rise again. Now Jeremiah just took the things in the tabernacle that Solomon used to give sacrifices, and he hid them for the latter days. That should give you a hint on what we're about to do when this child gets raised up again. Once again, we're not going to be on the street corner yelling at people. We're not going to be having slaves and white people on a leash like a dog. That's not what we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing these sacrifices that Solomon did, that the child was meant to do. Let's read on.
Verse 8, then shall the Most High show them these things, and the glory of the Most High shall appear, and the cloud also. And it was showed under Moses, and as when Solomon desired that the place might be honorably sanctified.
All right, we can close that, and if priest Azariah, you'll get 1 Kings chapter 8, verse 22. So we see that just as it was in Moses' days, just as it was in Solomon's days, they knew about these prophecies. They knew that would happen. And just as Moses sanctified a tabernacle, just as Solomon sanctified a tabernacle, those saints of the latter days shall do the exact same thing. They shall sanctify a tabernacle, not for some vain purposes, but to give worship sacrifices unto the Most High. That was the whole purpose. That was the purpose of this child being born. That was the purpose of him coming back to life, so that the children of Israel, so that Zion can give those sacrifices to the Most High once again. Now, let's get this. 1 Kings 8 and 22. Solomon is going to say the exact same thing that Jeremiah is going to be saying. That if we find ourselves being destroyed by the Gentiles, being scattered all about, we can come back. We can come back and give worship to the Heavenly Father if we return, repent, become new, change from our ways of wickedness, and come back to these sacrifices the Most High promised to us. 1 Kings chapter 8, verse 22.
And Solomon stood before the altar of the Most High in the presence of all the congregation of Israel, and spread forth his hands toward heaven.
So this is at the same instance where he dedicated that temple, right after he built it, right after the building was finished. And they consecrated, dedicated it to the Most High. And they offered the sacrifices, and Solomon came and prayed. Let's read on. Let's see what he prayed.
Verse 23, and he said, Most High Abba of Israel, there is no Abba like thee, in heaven above, nor on earth beneath, who keepest covenant and mercy with thy saints that walk before thee with all their hearts.
So he gave glory and honor unto the Most High. And he also prayed this. Just jump down to verse 46 and see also what he said about concerning the children of Israel. Now Solomon was very wise, and he knew the circuits of years. He knew the beginning and the end of times. And he knew this is a great thing that I've just done through the Spirit of the Most High. But I know this will only last for but a short period of time. I know we are going to be destroyed. We're going to be taken out of this land, ripped out and scattered. Most High, I know it's going to happen. Please be merciful unto our people. Let's see what he said in verse 46.
If they sin against thee, but there is no man that sinneth not, and thou be angry with them, and delivered them to the enemy, so that they carry them away captives unto the land of the enemy, far or near. Yet if they shall bethink themselves in the land whither they were carried captives, and repent, and make supplication unto thee in the land of them that carried them captive, saying, We have sinned, and have done perversely, we have committed wickedness, and so return unto thee with all their heart, and with all their soul, in the land of their enemies, which led them away captive, and pray unto thee toward their land, which thou gavest unto their fathers, the city which thou hast chosen, the house which I have built for thy name.
So Solomon said, if they're ever in captivity, if they're ever taken away from this tabernacle, the only place you could give those physical sacrifices, Most High, let them give those spiritual sacrifices. Let them go in their chambers of imagery. Let them go in their heart and say, we were wicked. We were an abomination before the Most High. Please, Abba, forgive us. Bring us back into this land so we can give those sacrifices again. This is what Solomon was praying because he knew the end of our people. He knew what would happen at this time. He knew that we were going to be destroyed, we were going to be wicked, and we would have to come back and turn from our iniquity. Now, once again, you have not heard us say at all up to this point, the Babylonians are wicked, the Babylonians are evil, we need to go back and seek vengeance on the Babylonians. You didn't hear us say any of that. In fact, you heard the contrary. You heard us say the Most High fought on the side of the Babylonians. And that was all because we were an abomination for the Most High. We were not some great, upstanding people. We were an abomination even during the time of Moses. Moses said, don't you think when we bring you into the land of Canaan, the Most High is doing this for your righteousness' sake. He's doing it because these people are wicked. He's doing it because he promised it to your forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He's not doing it because you, Israel, were righteous, because you are the most wicked people on this earth. This is the mindset we need to have. Some of us come from groups and organizations where we're looking like Israel's the greatest. Israel's the hottest. We're the salt of the earth. We got the flavor in the earth. We the best. We need to be doing the exact opposite. We are the worst. We are used toilet paper that needs to be flushed down a toilet. We are not worthy of anything that the Most High gave us. We are trash on the street. And that's how the nations are looking at us. And we need to come back and confess this. That's what Solomon said. If they can confess their iniquity, we need to stop talking about them being wicked, how wicked the Babylonians are. We need to focus on how wicked we were. And that is how we will rise. That is the first step to us rising up to be this great nation of Israel, or princes, priests of the Most High, that the Most High required us to be. That is the first step, is confessing our iniquity. Read on.
Verse 49. Then hear thou their prayer and their supplication in heaven, thy dwelling place, and maintain their cause. And forgive thy people that have sinned against thee, and all their transgressions wherein they have transgressed against thee, and give them compassion before them who carry them captive, that they may have compassion on them.
So once we do these things, we come and confess our iniquity, and we face that holy temple that was destroyed and leveled. The Most High said he will hear us. Solomon prayed and said, please, Abba, hear Israel when we make these supplications unto you. When we first confess our iniquity and confess our abominations, please hear us after our destruction, after our calamity. Just like what Jeremiah said, these things need to be in our heart, in our mind, to do them, to give these sacrifices spiritually until the Most High brings us back into this land. Let's read on.
Verse 51. For they be thy people and thine inheritance, which thou broughtest forth out of Egypt, from the midst of the furnace of iron, that thine eyes may be open unto the supplication of thy servant, and unto the supplication of thy people Israel, to hearken unto them in all that they call for unto thee. For thou didst separate them from among all the people of the earth, to be thine inheritance, as thou spakest by the hand of Moses thy servant, when thou broughtest our fathers out of Egypt.
All right, we'll drop that, and if APT John, you'll get Deuteronomy 30 and verse 1. We'll pick it up where Moses actually said the exact same thing, corroborating what Solomon prayed for, what Jeremiah prophesied about would happen, corroborating all of these things, that we would be a wicked nation, even though we were the chosen of the Most High. We would be wicked, we would be destroyed, we would be sent forth into captivity and scattered all throughout the earth. But even then, we can rise up from the ashes of Jerusalem. we can become a great nation once again. But it starts with us making these confessions to the Most High. We must be humble and say what we did. Say that we were this Zion, this woman, and we had this child and it was utterly destroyed. And we must make our lamentations and our mourning for our city that was utterly leveled and wiped off the face of the earth. We must make our lamentations for it. We can't keep coming like we are this great roaring lion. We need to come like a dog with our tail between the legs and apologize and say, I screwed up. We screwed up as a nation so we can get back right. That's the first thing they always tell you, and some people probably know in Alcoholics Anonymous. First thing you must do is say, hi, my name is Yarden, and I'm an alcoholic. Now, if you don't do that, you can't come back to this meeting. I'm Yarden, and, I don't drink alcohol sometimes. I ain't that bad. Brother, this ain't for you. You're at the wrong spot. You need to hit rock bottom, and then you can come back in, all right? You need to come and say on your knees, like, I'm an alcoholic, and I need help. Israel needs to do the same thing. I commit fornication, and I need help. I need help staying away from these idols, staying away from this abomination. I need help coming back to the Most High. I need help because we were utterly destroyed because of our abominations. Let's pick up with Moses saying the exact same thing. Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 1.
And it shall come to pass, when all these things are come upon thee, the blessing and the curse, which I have set before thee, and thou shalt call them to mind among all the nations, whether the Most High thy Abba have driven thee.
So Moses is saying, as we probably all know about the blessings and the curses, or a little bit about them at least, we know that these blessings will come, and the curses will also come if we reject the Most High, if we don't hearken unto him. And Moses is saying when these blessings come, which they will, because y'all be righteous for a little bit, but then when the curses come, and the Most High scatters you and drives you out to all these other nations, call these things to mind. All these things we went through, call it to mind, so you can be delivered. Read on.
Verse 2. And shalt return unto the Most High thy Abba, and shalt obey his voice according to all that I command thee this day, thou and thy children, with all thine heart and with all thy soul, that then the Most High thy Abba will turn thy captivity and have compassion upon thee, and will return and gather thee from all the nations, whither the Most High thy Abba has scattered thee.
This is how we get redeemed and resurrected from our dead state out of the land of all these nations where we are. He will turn back our captivity when we will circumcise our heart. We'll return our heart and our soul back unto him. Now, Moses set up these physical sacrifices, as we probably know. He set up the peace offerings where you slay the lamb and you cut out the inwards and you burn it to the Most High, and the priests get a portion and the children of Israel get a portion. He set up the sin offerings where you kill a physical lamb and a physical bullock. But is that what he said here? Did he say in the land of your captivity, go take a lamb and kill it and sacrifice, the Most High will hear you? No. He said, turn with your whole heart and your whole soul, and the Most High shall turn back the captivity. Exactly what Jeremiah said. Keep these things that Solomon set up in your heart and do them for the last days so you can come back to this resurrection. So that great son that was killed can be resurrected and brought back up. Let's continue on.
Verse 4. If any of thine be driven out unto the outmost parts of heaven, from thence will the Most High thy Abba gather thee, and from thence will he fetch thee.
Most High said if you do this, it doesn't even matter if they Elon Musk builds a spaceship and takes all black people and sends them to Mars. Most High said, I'm going to come back and I'm going to redeem you from out of there. If you do this thing, if you come first and confess your iniquity and humble yourself and turn your whole heart to the Most High and do what he said. Let's read on.
Verse 5. And the Most High thy Abba will bring thee into the land which thy fathers possessed, and thou shalt possess it. And he will do thee good, and multiply thee above thy fathers. And the Most High thy Abba will circumcise thy heart, and the heart of thy seed, to love the Most High thy Abba, with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, that thou mayest live.
All right, so the Most High set up through Moses a physical circumcision, where the man would circumcise a foreskin and have a mark. But he didn't come back and say that. He didn't say when you're scattered in your captivity, make sure your foreskin is circumcised. Now, we still do that as the children of Israel as part of our covenants. However, he said, come and circumcise your heart. Put this covenant, this agreement in your heart, in your mind, your soul, so that you can do it. Let's read on.
Verse 7. And the Most High thy Abba will put all these curses upon thine enemies, and on them that hate thee, which persecuted thee.
The Most High shall put these curses on our enemies. We don't need to go on the street corner and say, "Cursed be the enemies." No, when we are humbled, when we circumcise our heart, didn't say go on the street corner and yell at our enemies. It said circumcise your heart and turn back. Then the Most High would take all these curses that were upon us and bring it on our enemies. Even that great death and desolation that came to that son, the oblations, the city of Zion, all that shall happen to the cities of the Gentiles as well. But first, we must circumcise our hearts. We must humble down and get right with the Heavenly Father. Let's continue on.
Verse 8, and thou shalt return and obey the voice of the Most High, and do all his commandments which I command thee this day. And the Most High thy Abba will make thee plenteous in every work of thine hand, in the fruit of thy body, and in the fruit of thy cattle, and in the fruit of thy land for good. For the Most High will again rejoice over thee for good, as he rejoiced over thy fathers. If thou shalt hearken unto the voice of the Most High thy Abba, to keep his commandments and his statutes, which were written in this book of the law, and if thou turn unto the Most High thy Abba with all thy heart and with all thy soul, for this commandment which I command thee this day, it is not hidden from thee, neither is it far off.
So we have to come back to these commandments, to the statutes, the judgments, the law, the sacrifice of the Most High that he has set forth. And he's saying, turn your whole heart and your soul to it. And then he comes back and says, it's not far from thee. It's not hidden. It's not covered up where you cannot see it. It's not far away from you where you cannot attain it. Read on.
Verse 12, it is not in heaven that thou shouldest say, who shall go up for us to heaven and bring it into us, that we may hear it and do it.
It's not on the moon where you got to have Elon Musk and the Virgin Mobile guy and Jeff Bezos come together and they need to build a spaceship and go to the moon and go grab this ark and come down and give it to you. That's not where it is. Read on.
Verse 13, neither is it beyond the sea that thou shouldest say, who shall go over the sea for us and bring it unto us, and we may hear it and do it.
It's not even across the ocean where you got to say, who's going to get these boats so we can go back to Jerusalem and go to Mount Sinai and take those, the ark and everything, and take it and ship it back over here to America so we can do it. No, that's not where it is either. Where is it?
Verse 14, but the word is very nigh.
The word is very nigh. This law, this sacrifice that we are to do to resurrect this dead son, they are very, very nigh unto thee. Where are they?
In thy mouth and in thy heart, and thou mayest do it.
In thy mouth and in thy heart, that thou mayest do it. Just as Jeremiah said, just as Solomon said, that these words, this law, these sacrifices, to confess our iniquity, to remove them, to atone for our trespasses, and give that worship unto the Most High is not far from us. Jeremiah said, remember these things. I'm hiding them, but remember them. Keep them in your heart that you may do them. Moses was commanding and prophesying the exact same thing thousands of years before. That you would have these things in your heart, in your mouth, to actually go and do it. You should think on these sacrifices. Think on this temple that Solomon built that was destroyed. Think on this altar and speak these sacrifices that you can come back to the Most High, come back to the land, have your captivity turned back away from you, and you can come back and give those sacrifices to the Most High. That son may be resurrected. Now, as we start getting close to the end of this class, let's pick up Revelation chapter 11, verse 7. Actually, APT, John, if you'll hold that, Revelation 11 and 7, and if you'll grab Priest HOWPriesthood, Ezekiel chapter 37, and we'll start on the first verse. So let's talk a little bit about this captivity that we're in now. We are in a new captivity. We're not in the Babylonian captivity. We're in a mixture of all the captivities that we're in before. In the Chaldean captivity, the Egyptian captivity, Greek, Roman, Persian, and Babylonian, all mixed in one. We're in all these captivities in this modern day in America under the rule of Western society. And these are the people with the same spirit that killed our Messiah, killed our prophets, and killed this great son that was being prophesied about in Revelations 12 and in Ezra 10. We are in this predicament. That son, these oblations, have died and they have perished. But it was prophesied that they would be resurrected again. Let's get Revelation chapter 11, verse 7. Priest actually APT, John.
And when they shall have finished their testimony, the beast that ascended out of the bottomless pit shall make war against them, and shall overcome them and kill them.
So after these saints have the testimony, the prophecies of the Messiah, the beast that we talked about earlier shall rise up and shall kill them. That society ruled by Satan shall come up and slay each and every one of them, and they shall die and they shall perish. Read on.
Verse 8. And their dead bodies shall lie in the streets of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, where also the Most High was crucified.
Where the Lord Yahushua was crucified. In this city that is spiritually called Sodom, spiritually called Egypt, not physically, not physical Sodom, not physical Egypt, but those people with that same spirit of what they did in Sodom, where they had just great abundance and they saw of all their pleasures that they wanted to do and they fulfilled them and neglected the poor, the needy, and neglected the Most High. In Egypt, where there's bondage and slavery and accusations against the saints. In the captivity of the Romans and the Greeks as well, where they were a great society in terms of numbers and ruled and oppressed the people and taking on the Greek customs and culture. We're in this exact period where these righteous were slain, these righteous were killed, and our bodies lay dead in the streets, and this great city is rejoicing. Look at America taking on all of these, or Western society in general. It's not just one nation. It's all of these Western societies that have everything that all of these captivities had all balled up in one, that same exact spirit. They have that spirit of Sodom, where they have this great, immense richness, where they can just start inventing and thinking on whatever they want to do. Oh, you know what? I want to be a man today. I want to be a woman tomorrow. I want to be a transsexual the next day. I want to be this and that. They have all this abundance where there is no concern for the poor, the needy, those who have less than. People are just inventing anything they want to invent. Also Egypt, the house of bondage, where they have enslaved the saints, enslaved the chosen of Israel, and are still enslaving us to this day through many means of borrowing and lending, through employment, through societies don't care about us, continually increasing the workload and decreasing the pay. And also the same of the Greeks and the Romans, taking on the Greek and Roman culture of senators, of judges, of courthouses and everything. We went through several classes showing how Western society of today, European societies have taken on everything from Rome and from Greece. So much so they've taken on their idols and we don't even know it. They act like they're a godly society. By etching the quote-unquote 10 Commandments in the courthouse. But all the while that courthouse is designed like a Roman temple. And they have it named after Capitol Hill, the same hill where the Romans were doing their little Olympics to Jupiter. You have all this, or to Zeus really, you have all this abominations going on, this society that has all these captivities rolled into one, and it has slayed our people. Just like the Babylonians slayed that child and destroyed, leveled the city where no oblations were going down, this society today has done the exact same thing, where they crucified us and killed us, and they had our dead bodies laid out in the streets. And what did they do? Read on.
Verse 9. And they of the people in the kindreds and tongues and nations shall see their dead bodies 3 days and a half, and shall not suffer their dead bodies to be put in graves. And they that dwell upon the earth shall rejoice over them, and make merry, and shall send gifts one to another, because these two prophets tormented them that dwelt on the earth.
So now all the people of the earth, they see the dead bodies, the slain son, and they were overjoyed. They were celebrating. Like, yeah, we killed the saints. Yeah. Have a drink, my brother. Let's get drunk because we killed the saints. They were celebrating through this turmoil to our turmoil. Our depletion was their celebration and their joy. Our mourning was their mirth and jubilation. How much so our resurrection shall be their calamity. Let's read on.
Verse 11. And after 3 days and a half, the spirit of life from Abba entered into them, and they stood upon their feet, and great fear fell upon them which saw them.
So this son that we saw in Ezra, that we saw in Revelations, shall come back. They shall be resurrected. The Spirit of the Most High came on that son and raised him back up. And he stood on his feet after being dead for 3.5 days. The remainder of this curse of Adam that priest Gabaria brought us through, that chief priest brought us through, it was raised up in the last days. And everybody that witnessed it, that was celebrating, that was popping bottles because the oblations had fallen, they were sore amazed and said, I didn't expect this. This is not a twist that I expected. Let's read on.
Verse 12. And they heard a great voice from heaven saying unto them, Come up hither. And they ascended up to the heaven in a cloud, and their enemies beheld them. And the same hour was there a great earthquake, and a 10th part of the city fell. And in the earthquake was slain of men 7,000, and the remnant was affrighted, and gave glory to the Abba of heaven.
All right, so we see that once these oblations rise up as required by the Most High, there shall be an earthquake, and their city shall fall, instead of ours falling. Our city shall be established, and their city of accusations and wickedness shall fall and be destroyed. And the remnant shall turn back to the Most High. We can drop that. Let's get Ezekiel chapter 37. We'll start in the first verse. As we're seeing the exact same thing being brought forth, that Israel shall rise. Israel shall be resurrected. But to what? We're not being resurrected so we can go kill people. We're being resurrected so we can give these oblations to the Most High. The Most High will handle the punishment and the condemnation and the death that's going to follow. We don't have to worry about that. We don't have to look into that and say, man, I hope I get a two-edged sword so I can chop his head off, and I'm not just going to do it slow. I'm going to do it nice, too. I'm going to be smooth. Brother, don't focus on that. Focus on the oblations that we're going to be doing when the Most High raises us up. Don't focus on how you're going to kill these people that have done wickedness. The Most High is going to handle that. That's his job. We get above our pay grade, so to speak. Let's focus on raising up this son to give these oblations. We're going to get the exact same thing in Ezekiel 37, Most High willing. Let's start in the first verse. Priest HOWPriesthood.
The hand of the Most High was upon me, and carried me out in the spirit of the Most High, and set me down in the midst of the valley, which was full of bones, and caused me to pass by them round about. And behold, there were very many in the open valley, and lo, they were very dry. And he said unto me, Son of man, can these bones live? And I answered, O Most High, Abba, thou knowest.
So Ezekiel was taken into a valley with a bunch of bones. They were dry. If you eat some chicken and you don't throw the bone away for a minute, it's juicy at once, it's oily. Give it some time, that thing is going to be dry. You're like, this thing is past the expiration date. It's gone. And Ezekiel was here seeing these dead bones, these bones that were extremely dry. And the Most High said, or the angel came and spoke to him and said, can these bones live, son of man? Ezekiel said, you asked the wrong person. I don't know. If it was up to me, I'd say, no, I don't think so. So I'm going to say, you know, Most High. You know all things. You know if they can live. Continue on.
Verse 4. Again he said unto me, Prophesy upon these bones, and say unto them, O ye dry bones, hear the word of the Most High. Thus saith the Most High, Abba, unto these bones, Behold, I will cause breath to enter into you, and ye shall live.
The Most High is saying, yes, son of man, they shall live. I'm commanding you to prophesy unto these dry bones that are desolate, they are destroyed. It looks like they cannot live, but I'm telling you, prophesy unto them, and they shall live. The breath of life shall be blowed into them, and they shall live. Read on.
Verse 6. And I will lay sinews upon you, and will bring up flesh upon you, and cover you with skin, and put breath in you, and ye shall live. And ye shall know that I am the Most High.
So the Most High said he shall breathe in them life. The bones shall come together. Sinews and ligaments shall be put upon them, the muscles, and then flesh and skin shall be put upon these bones. They shall become living people. They shall become bodies. Bodies without souls, though. Let's read on.
Verse 7. So I prophesied as I was commanded, and as I prophesied, there was a noise, and behold, a shaking, and the bones came together, bone to his bone. And when I beheld, lo, the sinews and flesh came upon them, and the skin covered them above, but there was no breath in them.
So Ezra said, all right, Most High, you said they'll live. You know, I'll command them. I'll prophesy unto them. All bones come together. And they came together as a unit, as statues coming together. And then he saw the sinews coming, the ligaments, the tendons and the muscles, and the skin came and covered them. And they became living, but there was no breath of life in them. Continue on.
Verse 9. Then said he unto me, Prophesy unto the wind. Prophesy, son of man, and say to the wind, Thus saith the Most High, Abba, come from the four winds, O breath, and breathe upon these slain, that they may live.
Prophesy unto the winds of the Most High, as we went through in several classes. We have these four directional winds, north, south, east, and west. And in these four winds, these four quadrants, we have four blessed winds. And they are blowing into them to bring them back to life, to bring the breath of the Most High into these dry bones. Let's read on.
Verse 10. So I prophesied as he commanded me, and the breath came into them, and they lived, and stood up upon their feet, an exceeding great army.
Now this is the only part that tantalizes the senses of most of our Israelite brothers. An exceeding great army. See, we're going to be an army. We're going to be killing people. We're going to be going to war. No. They came up as a great unit, a great collective to do something. But it wasn't just go to war. Or they were going to war, but with whom? Who was the true enemy they were going to war with? We have to understand that. Many of us should know, those of the House of Wisdom know exactly what's going on. But we're going to continue on and read to show exactly what they're going to do, Most High willing. Let's continue on.
Verse 11. Then he said unto me, Son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel.
These bones are the whole house of Israel. Same thing that we saw in Revelations 12 and 13. Same thing we saw in 2 Ezra 9 and 10. This woman Israel lamenting, and her son died, and she was waiting to die. And they died, and they were dry for many, many years. And it appears we cannot come back again. Look at us today. Look at our people today. It appears we can't come out of this predicament. You got half of us being vaccinated, and the other half we just want to go out and party and do X, Y, and Z and do all types of foolishness. No thoughts on the Most High, and then only a small remnant have any type of inkling of the Most High. And even them are into some kind of crazy stuff. We're into some other pseudo-spirituality, or we're into Christian church, or we're into whatever. We are dry, and it appears we cannot live. If you ask anybody, just go on the streets too, hey, do you think black people can have their own nation and do X, Y, and Z? They'll laugh at you. Maybe in a million years, yeah, sure. That's the predicament we're in. It looks like we're so dry, we can't even lead a nation. We can't even lead a community. We can't even lead a government. Look at some of our governments when we had power. We were corrupt, we were wicked, we were abominable, and we exploit the people worse than the Gentiles sometimes. It appears we cannot live, we cannot come back. But Ezra is prophesying through the Spirit of the Most High that Israel, the whole house, shall come back. They shall rise into an exceeding great army to do one thing and one thing only. Israel shall rise, but unto what? Let's read on.
Behold, they say, our bones are dried, and our hope is lost. We are cut off for our parts.
Our bones are dried, and hope is lost. We have lost all hope. It seems we cannot come back. It's a great task to bring us into Egypt or to Israel and set us up and have a great temple and sacrifice in the Most High. All hope is lost, they say. Let's read on.
Verse 12. Therefore prophesy and say unto them, Thus saith the Most High, Abba, Behold, O my people, I will open your graves and cause you to come up out of your graves and bring you into the land of Israel.
Most High is saying, even though it appears they are dead and they cannot come back, the Most High is saying, I'm prophesying that they shall rise up out of their graves and come back to that land and give sacrifices once again. They shall come back and give that worship that was required from the beginning. This is the same that the Messiah did. When Lazarus died, he didn't say, oh, I got to go and hurry up. And he said, all right, let him wait. Let him sit. Sat 1 day. Sat 2 days. Sat 3 days. Came on the 4th day. Body was rotten. It was stiff. It was smelling. And they said, dig up his grave. He's asleep. And the man raised up from the dead. He did that so he could show the power of the Heavenly Father. If he could do this physical thing of bringing back a dead man who'd been dead for 4 days, how much more this nation that's been dead for 400 years, 1,000 years, and then some. Let's continue on.
Verse 13. And ye shall know that I am the Most High, when I have opened your graves, O my people, and brought you up out of your graves, and shall put my spirit in you, ye shall live, and I shall place you in your own land. Then shall ye know that I, the Most High, have spoken it and performed it, saith the Most High. The word of the Most High came again unto me, saying, Moreover, thou son of man, take thee one stick, and write upon it, for Judah, and for the children of Israel, his companions. Then take another stick, and write upon it, for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and for all the house of Israel, his companions.
All right, so we see after the Most High showed Ezra that the children of Israel shall be resurrected. It's the whole house of Israel. It's Israel and Judah. As we saw, the two kingdoms split and became arch enemies. The Most High said, after they are raised up, take a stick, Ezra, or Ezekiel, take this stick, take two sticks, and write one for Judah, one for Israel. Read on.
Verse 17. And join them one to another into one stick, and they shall become one in thine hand. And when the children of thy people shall speak unto thee, saying, Wilt thou not show us what thou meanest by these? Say unto them, Thus saith the Most High Abba, Behold, I will take the stick of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim, and the tribes of Israel, his fellows, and will put them with him, even with the stick of Judah, and make them one stick, and they shall be one in mine hand.
So he took these two sticks and bound them together and made them one thick staff in his hand. And the people shall ask, What does this mean, prophet? And he said, I would take the house of Judah and the house of Joseph through Ephraim, and I shall bind them together, and they shall become one. They shall no longer be enemies, but they shall be brethren. Let's read on.
Verse 20. And the sticks whereon thou writest shall be in thine hand before their eyes. And say unto them, Thus saith the Most High Abba, Behold, I will take the children of Israel from among the heathen, whither they be gone, and will gather them on every side, and bring them into their own land. And I will make them one nation in the land upon the mountains of Israel, and one king shall be king to them all. And they shall be no more two nations, neither shall they be divided into two kingdoms anymore at all.
So they shall no longer be divided. You shall not have the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judea separate from one another. You shall have them together as one nation, one group of people under one ruler and one king. Let's read on.
Verse 23. Neither shall they defile themselves any more with their idols, nor with their detestable things, nor with any of their transgressions. But I will save them out of all their dwelling places, wherein they have sinned. I will cleanse them. So shall they be my people, and I will be their Abba.
So the Most High is saying they shall be under one king, and they also shall be under one Abba, one ruler, one power. They shall not go and worship the idols as they did in the times past, in that time of great tribulation, where they were then subsequently killed and destroyed. They shall be under one ruler, that is the Most High, and the Most High shall appoint a ruler to be over them as one unified nation. Let's read on.
Verse 24. And David my servant shall be king over them, and they all shall have one shepherd. They shall also walk in my judgments, and observe my statutes, and do them.
So we see David shall be the king over them. David. Now we're going to talk about why it's David. But keep in mind, we said that they were going to be resurrected. These dry bones are going to be raised up. And then the two nations, the two separate brothers shall come together and reign as one. And they shall have a ruler, and his name shall be David. We'll talk on why. And you'll see why they became an quote-unquote exceeding great army and what they were doing, Most High willing. Let's continue on.
Verse 25. And they shall dwell in the land that I have given unto Jacob my servant, wherein your fathers have dwelt, and they shall dwell therein, even they and their children, and their children's children forever. And my servant David shall be their prince forever.
So David shall be their prince. And remember, we broke this down in several classes that the prince doesn't just mean just a royal son of a king. And why would it say first he's going to be the king and then say he's going to be the prince? This prince is saying he's going to be the priest over them forever. The lineage of David shall reign as the king priest over Israel. Over these two divisions that separate from one another, they shall cleave together again, and they shall have a king and a priest to rule over them. Let's read on.
Verse 26. Moreover, I will make a covenant of peace with them, it shall be an everlasting covenant with them.
So we see the Most High saying he shall make a covenant of peace. Now what does this mean? A covenant where there is no war? No. It's a covenant to give the peace offerings unto the Most High, just as it's written in Sirach 45:25, where a covenant of peace was made with them, with David. And he became the king priest over Israel. And the same thing shall happen in the latter days. They shall be kings and princes, or priests, reigning with the Messiah for 1,000 years. This is why he raised them up, to be in a covenant of everlasting peace, or peace offerings, to give sacrifices to the Most High. This is what that exceeding great army was for. Not to go and fight all the armies of the world, but to give those oblations in due season, which Most High we're going to cover in a second. Let's continue on.
And I will place them and multiply them, and will set my sanctuary in the midst of them forevermore. My tabernacle also shall be with them. Yea, I will be their Abba, and they shall be my people. And the heathen shall know that I, the Most High, do sanctify Israel, when my sanctuary shall be in the midst of them forevermore.
We see that the Most High is saying they shall be sanctified so they can go in the sanctuary and the tabernacle. And remember what they did every time they went into the tabernacle. Every time a righteous person went into the tabernacle anyway, they all gave sacrifices. When Solomon set it up, he burnt offerings so much they couldn't even fit it on this big altar the size of a bus. You got Hezekiah coming in, dedicating it so the priest can go and give sacrifices. You had Josiah setting up the tabernacle so the priest could go and give sacrifices. This is what they were all set up to do. And the Most High said, I will sanctify them and put my tabernacle and my sanctuary in the midst of them. Let's drop that in APT, John. If you get 1 Chronicles chapter 24, verse 3. And before we drop that, just read that one more time, verse 24. Ezekiel chapter 37, verse 24. Priest Azariah.
And David my servant shall be king over them, and they shall all have one shepherd. They shall also walk in my judgments, and observe my statutes, and do them.
All right, so we see that David shall be king, and also said he shall be a prince or a priest over them. Now, why is that? Why is it David that's going to be a priest? Why didn't they choose some of the other kings? Why didn't they choose Hezekiah? Why didn't they choose Josiah? Some of the righteous kings. Why didn't they choose Solomon? Why did they choose David to be his mighty and king over them forever? His prince or priest and king. Let's get 1 Chronicles chapter 24 and verse 3.
And David distributed them, both Zadok of the sons of Eleazar and Hamelech of the sons of Ithamar, according to their offices and their service.
So we see David took the priest and started distributing them to the office of their service of the Most High. Let's jump down to verse 7.
Now the first lot came forth to Jehoiarib, the second to Jedediah, the third of Haram, the fourth to Syriam.
All right, we can drop that. Let's jump up to verse 18. We see David setting up the courses where the priest would come to give sacrifice to the Most High. And how many did you have?
The 23 to Deliah, and the 24 to Maaziah.
You had 24 lots, 24 courses, or 24 pieces of this course where the priest would come. Meaning there was priests coming at every hour of the day, 24 hours, to give the service to the tabernacle. Finish that up.
Verse 19. These were the ordinances of them in their service to come into the house of the Most High, according to their manner, under Aaron their father, as the Most High Abba of Israel had commanded them.
All right, now let's jump over to 1 Chronicles 27, and you can pick up in the first verse. So we see David set up 24 hours, 24 lots in which the priests came to give service to the Most High in the tabernacle. They came at 1 hour, gave sacrifice. Then the next crew came and gave sacrifices. Let's look at how many there were.
Now the children of Israel after their number, to wit, the chief fathers and captains of thousands and hundreds, and the officers that served the king in any matter of the courses, which came and went out month by month throughout all the months of the year, of every course were 24,000.
All right, so David, also with the 12 lots, set up different stations for every single month. And every month came in 24,000 priests to give those sacrifices. Sounds like the same 24 lots. Meaning you had every month 1,000 priests coming in every lot. And they all rotated for that 1 month. So these priests, in the course of David, worked 1 month out of the year and 1 hour a day for those 30 days that month. And they were done. That was a easy job, so to speak. They didn't have to work like we're working today, working to the bone, 40-hour weeks every day, sometimes more, 50, 60-hour works every day with 2 vacation days, and that's it. That's not what the course of David had. It had priests coming in every month, 1 month out of the year. You had 24,000 of them, 1,000 for each lot each hour. Let's continue on.
Verse 2. Over the first course for the first month was Yeshubim, the son of Zabdiel, and in his course was 24,000.
All right, so jump to verse 15. We see 24,000 for the first month in the course of Yashobim, in the course of David. 24,100 for every lot for all 24 hours of the day and night in the course of David for the first month. Let's go to verse 15.
The 12th captain for the 12th month was Heldai, the Netophathite of Nethino, and in his course was 24,000.
All right, so now we see for all 12 months, you had 24,000 priests coming in, blazing up sacrifices. And you had different priests. You never had a priest that was tired, that was weak, that couldn't do it. He only had 1 hour a day for 30 days, and then he had the rest of the 334 days off. Basically, they probably came in for the high holy days as well, but they all had just that month that they had to do it. Now we can do some of the simple math on this. You have, once again, 24,000 priests. Divide that by 24 lots, you have 1,000 priests in every hour. So that's 1 lot, 1 day for 30 days of the month. Now multiply that 24,000 by 12 for all 12 months. You have 288,000. Sounds like an exceeding great army to me. A great multitude of people coming to give these sacrifices to the Most High. This is what they did. This is what that exceeding great army in Ezekiel 37 did. They didn't go to fight wars with the sword. They fought wars from heaven. They fought in the spirit and fought against Satan, bringing him down so that all these nations could topple afterward. Remember, the beast was given power by the dragon, by Satan. The beast wasn't given power just because America's intelligent, just because Germany had great weapons. And that's not why they had power. They had all that because the dragon, Satan, gave it to them. Now, if you'll get Revelation chapter 7, and we'll end on that, Most High willing. Priest Azariah, Revelation chapter 7, verse 1. Now, we see that you had 288,000 for all 24 hours of the day for the whole entire year. Now, you have these being the day watch and the night watch. But the Messiah came back and said, we're the children of the day. And there's 12 hours of the day and 12 hours of the night. So do a simple math. If you were to divide this exceeding great army of 288,000 priests and divided them up by those who were in the day watch and those who were in the night watch, what number do you have? 144,000. Sounds like a number we probably heard before. Let's get that, Revelation chapter 7, verse 1. Priest Azariah.
And after these things I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. And I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living Abba. And he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels, to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, Hurt not the earth, neither the sea nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our Abba in their foreheads.
So the Most High is showing, or the angel is showing John the Revelator these things that are going to pass. And there's these 4 angels that are holding back these 4 winds, these 4 quadrants, those cursed winds in them to blow on the earth, to bring forth that great cataclysm. And he said it won't happen until the angels sealed the servants of the Most High in their foreheads, make a covenant with them, as Nehemiah sealed them when they came out of Babylon. They made a new covenant of the old covenant, and they were sealed. They shall have not the mark of the beast on them, but the mark of the Most High. And he's going to tell us the number of those that were sealed. Read on.
Verse 4. And I heard the number of them that which were sealed, and there were sealed 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel.
There were sealed 144,000 from all the tribes of the children of Israel. All the children of Israel, as it said in Ezekiel, they were bound together. They were no more separate. It wasn't just Levi in the land of Judea or Judah giving up the true sacrifice. They all together became the priests of the Most High. Let's read on.
Verse 5. Of the tribe of Judah were sealed 12,000. Of the tribe of Reuben were sealed 12,000.
Let's drop that and get verse 8.
Of the tribe of Zebulun were sealed 12,000. Of the tribe of Joseph were sealed 12,000. Of the tribe of Benjamin were sealed 12,000.
So we see all 12 tribes of Israel, from each one were sealed 12,000 priests. And do the math, 12,000 times 12, 144,000. The exact number you need of priests to give up those oblations in the day watch, while the church in heaven is giving up those oblations in the night watch. This is that sealing. And this is the rising up of Israel again after Israel has fallen. And our oblations, our sacrifices died and ceased and stopped. And oblation or abominations overspread. Then you have this resurrection coming back. You have these saints that were slain coming back to give that due worship unto the Most High in due season. 144,000 in the day watch, 144,000 in the night watch. An exceeding great army, not to fight with the sword, but to fight with the sword of the word, to cast down strongholds, to accuse Satan, who has sought to accuse us, and to bring them down. This is that resurrection that we're coming to. This is how Israel shall rise. We must confess our iniquities and enter into this priesthood. We must become a nation of priests, and not priests meaning teachers. That is a side job of the priest, basically, is to teach people. The main job is to give sacrifices to the Most High. Jeremiah talks about time there shall be no more teaching, because everybody shall know, and all the priests shall just give oblations. There shall be no more need for a teacher, only the oblations to go down continually. That is the occupation, that is the job that we're coming back to. And that is how we rise from these ashes. That is how we rise from the dead, open up our graves and come out and receive that breath of life by partaking in these oblations that have fallen, that have died, that we must now lament for. It's our time to lament, to mourn. Most High willing, it will be our time to celebrate and be joyous. And as the scriptures say, they shall no longer say, the Most High liveth that brings us out of Egypt. They shall talk about the Most High lives that brought us out of this spiritual Egypt, out of spiritual Sodom, out of this captivity of the new world, and brought us to be a holy nation unto the Most High. So with that, we're going to shut down the class, Rise Israel, and we're going to open up the floor for Q&A. So those watching online, if you have any questions, now's the time to pose them, to send them forth. And for anybody here in the audience who has any questions, you can also come and bring forth those questions as well. Anybody have any questions, you can raise your hand. I see Sister Medina has a question. You want to take that? You want to take the Oh, yeah, Mike. All right, we're coming to you.
All praises, great class, priest. Thank you.
All praise the Most High.
So back in 1 Kings chapter 8, verse 49, I wanted to know what is meant by maintain their cause.
You said in 1 Kings?
Yes, chapter 8, verse 49.
1 Kings chapter 8, verse 29. Will you grab that?
49.
49.
Okay. Is that not what I said?
He said 29.
Oh, my bad. Okay, well, I meant 49. 1 Kings chapter 8, verse 49. Let's go and read that.
Then hear thou their prayer and their supplication in heaven, thy dwelling place, and maintain their cause.
All right, so we see this was the point where Solomon was giving a prayer to the Most High and saying he knew what was going to happen, that we were going to fall, that we were going to be destroyed, and that we were going to have a plight with the Most High. We're going to want to come back and say, our cause is that we want to come back to this holy city. We want to come back to it and rule as Israel like we were supposed to, being princes and priests of the Most High. You said verse 49, right? Maintain their cause. Read on.
And forgive thy people that have sinned against thee, and all their transgressions wherein they have transgressed against thee, and give them compassion before them who carried them captive, that they may have compassion on them.
So this is our cause. Our cause is essentially our purpose in this case. Our purpose is we're looking to be forgiven of our iniquity, forgiven of our trespasses, and come back into this land, have the compassion of the Most High again. So the Most High shall maintain us so that we can give these oblations so that we shall come back. He shall give us the means and the needs that or give us what we need to give these oblations so we can come back and give those oblations to the Most High. That is our cause, our purpose, our passion like the Messiah was. His whole cause or his whole purpose was to consecrate this new covenant. So we in these latter days could come back and give those oblations in due season and seek that pity and compassion from the Heavenly Father. So that's what it's talking about here. The Most High will maintain us and maintain our cause or our purpose so we can come back to this land and be forgiven of our iniquity.
That's what I was trying to get at, was that the cause, or see if the cause was natural, oblations and spiritual sacrifice.
Oh, definitely. God. Just like I said, the passion of the Christ, as they say. His passion, his desire, his overall goal was to consecrate this new covenant so we can have a new and living way to give sacrifices to the Most High. So right on point. All right, see, we got another question back.
Excellent. As priest.
All praises.
And Amos 9 and 11. Is that talking about the covenant of David as well?
So Amos chapter 9, verse 11. Amos chapter 9, verse 11. Read right on point. Yeah, go ahead and read it when you got it.
In that day will I raise up the tabernacle of David that is fallen, and close up the breaches thereof, and I will raise up his ruins, and I will build it as in the days of old.
All right, so we see that's right on point. That's talking about this exactly. Just as you read in Ezekiel 37, that he shall set up David as the king and the prince, or the king and the priest. He's talking about the same thing in this prophecy here. Amos is saying, the Most High shall restore the tabernacles of David that have fallen. Remember, we went through the time of the kings, and we showed how many people started tearing down the temple. They started cutting off the priests. They started stopping the oblation that David started up. But you saw a few kings restoring the tabernacles of David. We saw Hezekiah doing the same thing. He said, priests, get back in order. Get back in your courses. We saw Josiah do the exact same thing as well. And they started restarting this course of David, restoring the breaches. Now, unfortunately, despite their efforts, we were still destroyed, and Jerusalem was leveled. But Amos also prophesied, like he said in this, that they shall raise up those ruins of Jerusalem, where the temple was, where the city of David was, where they rose up the priests to give oblations on all 24 lots of the day. That shall be raised up again, and we shall give those sacrifices in due season. So yeah, that's right on point. This is talking about exactly what we went through today. That they shall come back in the course of David, in the 24 lots, in the 12 months, and give those oblations to the Most High in due season as that exceeding great army of 144,000. Con, definitely. All praises. All right. Looks like that's it on the questions. We'll go ahead and close down the class there. Once again, if we want to rise, we want to come up, if we want to restore the ruins of Jerusalem, this is how we do it. We must first confess our iniquity, confess our faults. Once again, the Most High used the Babylonians as a tool. The Most High took them and warred against us with them. It wasn't the Babylonians. It wasn't they were wicked. They were evil. We got to condemn the Babylonians. We got to condemn the Romans or whoever. Remember, Pontius Pilate didn't even want to crucify the Messiah. It was our own people that said, nah, kill him. He ain't our king. Our king is Caesar. It was our own people. We must first remember that we were wicked. We were off. and then the captivity will be turned back, and the Most High will raise us up again. This is how Israel shall rise from the nothing state that we are in today. So let's do that. Let's heed the calling. If you're interested in joining the priesthood, you can do so. You can apply at shekinah.com/priest application. You can also get a calendar to know when to serve the Most High in due season. Definitely study it, for it is a study guide. You can get that at shekinah.com/calendar to get your calendrical study guide to know when to serve the Most High in due season, when to give those atonements, when to fast for these days of mourning. We also have another important day coming up in about a month and 7 days, the Day of Atonement coming up, where we make a great expiation, a great atonement for the people and confess our iniquities. This is coming back, so look out as well as you start posting that registration for these feast days so you can come be a part of that atonement, Most High willing. And with that, when we come back to these commanded high holy days and give the sacrifice to the Most High as prophesied by Jeremiah, by Moses, by Solomon, by every great man, Amos as well, then the Most High will turn back our captivity. So let us indeed rise up, Israel. Shalom.
He who hath ears to hear, listen carefully as we speak virtue, reaching the world through the efforts of the priests, repairers of the breach, restorers of the paths, rebuilding the tents of David. Our home is found at last at the tabernacle of congregation, where we baptize and anoint our nation, performing oblations upon the brazen altar, walking in the ways of the appointed Savior with poise, escaping the noise from Satan and his poisonous nature. Without fail he accuses the brethren, using his weapons of collusion, and then sin comes upon us, and we deserve it. To be honest, we were cursed cause we honored and were worshipping the gods of this world and was living lawless. At first to the written law without purpose and little knowledge, serving our wicked conscience. Thus righteous judgment was handed down from the courts of the Most High. A sobering moment, but let's be holy and pure while we endure and ensure life comes forth. Let us hold tight, secure in our roles as we strive, adorned with our robes white and clean. It might seem like the loneliest road, but we stride in hope as the Most High reveals his ideals. And so we exercise patience as well as love, dwelling safe in the seventh covenant, graciously sent the sustenance. Let us exemplify faith through hell and suffering, praying to quell the punishment, waiting on heaven's government to be established, as it was in the Garden of Eden, when Abba had breathed life into creation, and our forefather received the living word. No more are we called prisoners, we live and learn, and study to be approved as the sons of Yahweh, who were lovingly given rules to better build and preserve truth. The bricks surrounding the kingdom are the 7 pillars of virtue. This is a house of wisdom. Shalom.